Before we start today's episode, we want to briefly acknowledge a serious situation involving a former teammate. We do believe that silence is the wrong message. That individual has been removed from our gym and is no longer affiliated with us or this podcast. We stand by our team's decision and support a safe, respectful environment for everyone. We won't be discussing it further out of respect for those affected. Now let's get into the next podcast.
You're listening to The Simple Man with Ethan Krell and Stan, Nicky Rod, and Damian Anderson. Stay a while if you know about the jiu-jitsu. If you don't, you can come too. This is PT.
Welcome back to another episode of the Simple Man podcast. We have two great guests here. First is actually my striking coach, Mr. Elton Wells. He is a former senior software engineer at NVIDIA, turned full Muay Thai coach, striking coach, head of my MMA career, essentially, me and Jackson.
Fell apart, obviously.
And we have another very special guest.
My coach.
You better talk me up better than that.
Oh, we have an even specialer guest, the one and only. But yeah, in all seriousness, Firas Zahabi, one of the GOAT MMA instructors, coaches.
Talking to the mic as well.
I don't even know. Oh yeah, I don't even know where to begin with. I mean, you guys all the listeners already know who Firas is. Yeah, this is really a meeting of the minds between two great brains in the sport of combat sports, and I'm really excited to listen to you guys talk and communicate. And Firas has been trying to teach me techniques for years to no avail. So hopefully you guys can communicate and maybe I'll learn something from this.
Yeah, for those that don't know, I mean, most of you guys will already know Firas, but for those who don't know, he's one of the most respected minds in MMA, as a coach, as a philosopher, as a strategist in MMA. He's trained legends like Georges St-Pierre and has built a reputation for his deep understanding of the fight game, both physically as well as mentally. So yeah, we're gonna dive deep into some MMA topics.
Amazing. Maybe just some background lore. This is, we're up here in Montreal. Elton and Firas, thank you so much for your time. Elton flew all the way from Austin. Firas, a million things going on every day. It's fight week. Your brother's fighting. There's just a million things going on. So thank you guys for the time. And I guess maybe if you guys want to just introduce yourselves, how would you do so if we didn't already? Just
Yeah, sure. So Elton Wells from Ambush Muay Thai. We have 4 locations in Central Texas, 2 in Austin, 2 in San Antonio. Primarily been focused on Muay Thai, but I personally am starting to work more with MMA fighters. I have a small team of some very, very talented guys who I think are on the path to being world class. One of me and Damian. We have Jackson Glass and also Diego Cortez that we're training, almost every day together. And so basically, I had the opportunity to come on here and talk with Firas, and so I'm here to learn from one of the best.
Awesome.
Well, thank you guys. I'm Coach Zahabi, Firas Zahabi. I trained many fighters throughout the years. I've been training competitors at the UFC level for over 20 years, and most notably it's Georges St-Pierre, but many top 15 guys throughout the decades. And I'm a black belt under John Danaher. And, of course, I've trained Muay Thai for many years, boxing. I've trained in Thailand many, many times. And I like to do it all, so I'm more of an MMA coach than anything else. But I definitely do it all. That's my thing. I like to bring in coaches who are experts in one domain. But me, I really like to learn it all. I want to learn the wrestling, the jiu-jitsu, the clinching, the whole thing. So I think of myself as more of an MMA coach.
So before we get into some technical questions, can you just give us a rundown? What was your martial arts beginning like? How did you get started? Were you a fighter? Were you always a coach? And how did this mental switch happen from you just being someone that loved to do the game to becoming, a great MMA coach?
Well, like everybody else, I saw Royce Gracie win UFC 2. Okay, so I saw the preview of UFC 2, which they were showing clips of UFC 1, and there was this little guy they put up on their shoulders, which was the winner. He weighed around 170 pounds, and they were showing that he's taking out these giant guys, and I couldn't believe that martial arts was true. I was totally mind blown. I begged my parents to get UFC 2. I wanted to buy the pay-per-view. I'm like freaking out. I got to see this guy. And I watched UFC 2. I thought he was going to get killed. I thought Royce Gracie was going to get killed because they were showing his opponents. His opponents were big. They were muscular. They were like something out of a movie. And lo and behold, he beat everybody. And it blew my mind. Like, I just couldn't believe my eyes. So I started buying every black belt magazine that talked about grappling. Anybody who said anything, the word grappling, I was completely obsessed. I wanted to see how this guy did it. Why? I was bullied, when I was younger, I was bullied. I was like, martial arts is real. This guy has the answer, man. This guy can beat up these monsters. So I was totally like gun-ho over jiu-jitsu, especially Royce Gracie. And then I met a purple belt under Renzo Gracie, because I also watched another tournament. I'm forgetting the name of it now, but Renzo Gracie, the cousin of Royce, fighting in a MMA tournament, 3 fights in one night. He beats a judo guy, Ben Spikers, beats him, chokes him out, steps on the back of his neck, walks over him. I couldn't believe it. It's like Royce Gracie, but the bad version, the evil version. Renzo Gracie, the bad boy of the family. It just blew my mind even more. Like, this guy was just even crazier. And he was wilder in the octagon. So I found the guy. I went to a grappling tournament in Montreal. I saw a grappling flyer. I was like, oh, I have to go see this. And I saw this team of jiu-jitsu guys who were just killing everybody. And they were trained under Angelo Exarchos. Angelo Exarchos started jiu-jitsu in Montreal. He really put it on the map. He was a purple belt under Renzo Gracie. He was going from Montreal to New York every weekend, training with Renzo Gracie.
That was the first connection. Angelo
Exarchos. Now, I'll tell you something. Angelo had already done wrestling. He was a freestyle wrestler. He was doing gymnastics, so he was already like a hybrid grappler. It was quite incredible. So when I learned grappling with him, he was only teaching twice a week. We were renting a kung fu school. And I would train the other days because I was obsessed with jiu-jitsu. I get my neighbors in. I put like carpets on. I put like covers on the ground. We do technique, and I was really obsessed with jiu-jitsu. But we had very little access because we only had one purple belt, and he would only teach twice a week. Long story short, he had a severe injury to his neck. He had 2 herniated discs in his neck, so he decided to stop jiu-jitsu altogether. They elected me. They're like, hey, could you teach from now on? I was like, yeah, but I'm just like, 2 or 3 years in. He's like, yeah, but you're the more technical guy. You're the guy who's always coming. You're always showing up. You're very dedicated. It was a very small group. We're talking about 10, 15 guys here. And jiu-jitsu was not cool yet. It was not mainstream. It was far from it. And 15 guys is on a good day. That's like the busiest day of the week. So I was doing it for fun, just for fun. I never thought I would grow to this. We moved from the Kung Fu school to Tristar Gym, and I was doing it for fun. I was going to school. My whole plan was to become a lawyer. One day, a guy named Georges St-Pierre walks into the gym, and me and him were like really obsessed over MMA and jiu-jitsu. And we had like-minded thinking, do it all. You got to be able to wrestle.
Real quick, what age were you? What age was George?
20 years old.
You were 20.
We were both the same age.
Oh, you guys were the same age?
Yeah, we're same age.
Oh.
We're same age. I'm a few months older than him. So he walked in. We were obsessed with jiu-jitsu, but we also knew we had to wrestle. Because back then, believe it or not, people were like, hey, no, you don't want to do too much other than jiu-jitsu. Like, if you go into too much striking, you're going to lose your jiu-jitsu. If you do too much wrestling, you're going to lose your jiu-jitsu. Because back then, the jiu-jitsu guys would always win. But we saw it coming that the jiu-jitsu guys were having a harder and harder time. They're not as consistent in their winning. So we had that idea that we're going to be well-rounded. And lo and behold, George is probably arguably the first guy who can do it all.
Yeah.
I guess now let's start getting into some of the questions for you. And then Elton has a list of great questions as well. I guess the first one is, why do you believe GSP was so dominant? Why did he become one of the greats? And are there people that are in the gym that you see with great potential that don't succeed, and why? Or what is the most common reason why people don't achieve their dreams of becoming a UFC champion?
I'll tell you this, okay? George is a super athlete. He's been doing track and field since he's young. His father was a black belt. His father trained him in karate. Okay, he also had other karate trainers. He had great athleticism. He had great footwork from karate. When he started to learn wrestling, his athleticism quickly gave him success, but he was also an incredibly dedicated student. So 1, he was a great athlete. 2, he was a very very dedicated. He would never miss practice. And the more success he had, the more he hired better trainers. Like he kept surrounding us with better and better trainers. Every time he made money, he would reinvest in his training. He was a very, very smart guy, very intelligent guy. And, you know, that helped me a lot because I got to work with all these trainers. So when we met John Danaher, when we had Freddie Roach, when we had all these great striking coaches come down, Phil Nurse, etc., I got to be we were both like very happy to learn from them. You know, we're very, we were super ecstatic to have these great trainers spend time with us and energy with us, you know. So it was a very positive team vibe. You know, George, the more success he had, the more he supported the team, the more he built his team around him. So I would tell you, he was super athletic and he was super dedicated and he was very smart in building his team.
How did the John Danaher connection get made? I thought you guys. Oh, it was from Angelo.
Originally, we had the New York connection with Angelo, but we were starting to train with BTT, Fabio Hollanda, in Montreal because we had a black belt in town. So we're like, okay, it's convenient to train in town. So we started training with BTT. We had a falling out. We had a difference of opinion on how George should train for his fights. We had a difference of opinion. We decided to part ways. And then we started going to New York. And that's when John and George met. Now, when George met John, George came back from New York and he was like, this guy tapped me out 5 times in 5 minutes. And I was like, no, it can't be 5 times in 5 minutes. You know, I know how George is. John Danaher. John Danaher was rolling at the time.
Remember, pass the mic.
Yeah. So George actually trained with John, and he came back and he's like, "Oh my God, this guy tapped me out a million times. You gotta learn who this guy is."
And look, at the time, I think George was a blue belt, but he was no ordinary blue belt. You could put him with a black belt, and the black belt's not gonna tap him. Like George he's a phenom. Yeah. And I was like, 5 times in 5 minutes. He's like, yeah, even worse than that. I lost count how many times he tapped me. I'm like, nah, it can't be that bad. It can't be that bad. Then I got to train with John, and he just destroyed me and George, like just over and over again, like played with us like kids. And look, back then we didn't have exposure to that level of jiu-jitsu. You know, that was the first time we saw a guy who can like really do everything: armbar, triangle, leg lock. Like there's no subs he didn't do. He was always doing every sub from early on. So really blew our minds, and then we became really connected to John. And John was always teaching us how to prep for a fight. You know, how you have to break everything down, how do you strategize. He really taught me and George how to strategize.
Alrighty, what we got here? I don't know what to do. Oh wow, it's working. Whoa! It vibrates. It's my first time trying out Anaconda Fightwear's heated air compression knee massager. Some cool things is that it's a 3-in-1 device. So there's compression, there's vibration, and then there's also heat. So this thing is pretty cool actually. And they have this cool dial where I can actually adjust the heat settings, which is pretty interesting. And this is a touch screen. That's so wild. Yeah, you guys can't really tell, but it's like right now it's vibrating and heating while pinching my knees, you know, compressing all around. It's like a 3D thing, I guess. So it's like all encompassing. It's all around my entire knee. The vibration kind of helps flush out, you know, the fluids that can build up in your knee, that inflammation in your knee. The compression kind of helps drive nutrients deep inside that joint. And then the heat just kind of relieves just general stiffness. So this is really good for after training. Definitely something that I'm going to be incorporating in my, you know, in my recovery routines. A lot of people, you know, focus hard on the training, but not a lot of athletes really focus heavily on their recovery. So definitely gotta be using this now. When did you make the shift now from becoming a student to coach? Like, how did you make that mental shift, or when did that happen?
When I was training with George, we were more sparring partners at first. There was other coaches in the gym, kickboxing coaches and wrestling coaches that we had that were around for a long time. They've been doing it for a long time, so they would guide us. But there was no MMA coach. And every coach wanted us to do his thing. Like the kickboxing coach wanted to do more kickboxing. The wrestling wanted to do more wrestling. The grappling coaches wanted to do more grappling. George needed somebody to kind of put it all together. You know, what makes sense for this fight? You know, the next fight coming up, like what strategies? So me and him would talk, and he was like, you know, you understand what I'm thinking too. So why don't I put you head of the whole staff? You know, the whole team. And because I was doing MMA with him, I was watching his MMA sparrings, and we were trying to tackle the problem in a way that made sense, but you can't really ask the kickboxing coach what to do, because he's going to be like, hey, you got to kickbox the guy. It's normal. That's what he knows. That's what he does. But there might be more to the fight, bringing your kickboxing and grappling together, like, should we kick in round one? Should we not kick in round one? The guy's really, if you kick his leg in round one, he's going to double leg you. Well, the kickboxing coach might not be thinking that. He might be thinking, hey, tie him up and knee him. But, well, you know what? You might not want to grab the guy in a clinch. Why? This guy's a really good clincher. He could take you down from there. So it was all things like that. And mostly after he lost to Sarah. After he lost to Sarah, he was like, look, I want you to take over as head coach and really put things together. We have a lot of great guys to work with. What makes the most sense?
Wow. You want to take out the list? Or
Yeah, sure. So we touched on this a little bit earlier today at the gym. We were talking about this recently. Oh, yep. All right.
hear yourself.
All right. Ilya Tapuria was on Joe Rogan recently, and one of the things that he mentioned in that was that in between fight camps that he does very little MMA training, meaning specifically integrating it together. Says he really trains just the boxing, just wrestling, just grappling. And then I think I remember, if I remember correctly, there's an interview with George I saw several years ago where he was talking about the same subject, where I believe he said at the time that he would work MMA one day a week, and then the rest of the days, more or less the same thing, was really kind of siloed in his training. When we were at the gym earlier, we saw a striking practice which integrated some striking with wrestling. We saw a wrestling practice where it was integrating wrestling and jiu-jitsu. So I was just kind of curious, kind of where are your views at on this in terms of how much to train the disciplines separately, and then when to mix them, whether it be MMA altogether or even just kind of like, two things together.
Yeah, I really think, outside of a fight camp, you should be doing boxing all by itself. You should be doing Muay Thai all by itself. You should be doing your grappling practice. For me, grappling incorporates wrestling. Like, wrestling and grappling should be in the same practice, I think. You should be doing your takedowns as a warm-up, and then your arm bars on the ground as a warm-up. You should be doing both, and then when you're going live, you should be doing both, in my opinion. So if you look at any Olympic wrestling team, they don't just do ground on one day and then standing on another. They do it all in one practice. So for me, I mainly separated between striking and grappling, and grappling includes wrestling. I know a lot of jiu-jitsu clubs out there. For them, grappling means we're on the ground. And in Tristar, we train wrestling. Everybody has to wrestle. It's part of the curriculum. So it makes sense to me that if you're not competing anytime soon, you want to do just, let's say, kickboxing. You're doing endless rounds of kickboxing, and you're really like trying to break through a plateau. However, I do integrate one day a week where it's kind of like what you guys saw today was a 1 minute wrestling situation and 1 minute striking. And the guys were going from wrestling to striking, wrestling to striking, wrestling to striking. And there's a really specific reason why I do that is because I find the cardio of wrestling and striking is very unique. So I can take a guy, he's really good at cardio when he's striking, and then on other days he's doing jiu-jitsu and wrestling and his cardio is fine. But then I put him in an MMA fight and he gets tired. Why? It's the transition between grappling and striking. They're opposite contractions. One is dynamic, one is like almost isometric. It's more of a grinding type of, you're grinding your gears when you're wrestling and doing jiu-jitsu. And all of a sudden, 15 seconds later, I'm asking you to do something explosive. I don't know what it is, but it's the most tiring element of the entire fight. The switch back and forth. And I've noticed that too, I've noticed that with every athlete, even George, like when he starts his MMA camp, the hardest thing is the first few weeks of doing takedowns with striking. So what we did is we had decided to 1 day a week always have a day where we're going from striking to wrestling/grappling scenarios, to always maintain that throughout the year. Why? Because we found that it was such a big hump to get over if we didn't do it. So maybe Monday you're boxing, Tuesday you're doing wrestling, but on 1 day of the week, there has to be a merger of the two because that cardio is very unique and it's not easy to get in 6 weeks before a fight.
So do you merge, it sounds like you merge more frequently now as opposed to then where it was more focused on 1 day a week?
Well, let's say we're in training camp, we're probably going to merge a little every day. We're going to merge our wrestling and striking together every day. So I'll make the guy hit pads, and then I'll make him do wrestling situation. After he'll do like say 7-10 rounds of pads, then we're gonna bring a guy in and he's gonna do fence wrestling or whatever. We're gonna have the same, like we're gonna merge more often during training camp. Wow, we're trying to get really specific. But in between training camps, there's still a day where we merge. Why? Because we found that merging 6 weeks out, 8 weeks out, it's not that easy. There's a cardio that's specific to the sport.
I see. Okay.
You know, a great example. Watch Bo Nickel, okay? Last fight, last weekend. He seemed to get a little bit tired once they got back onto their feet. And that guy's a super athlete. He's a super athlete. He's a great puncher. He's got very explosive. He's very dynamic. We've seen him knock people out. Obviously, he's a great wrestler. There's no doubt about it. What happened in that fight? He seemed to get tired. Well, let me tell you something. That guy's in shape. You can make him do more fitness. It doesn't matter. You make him roll more. You make him run more. You make him swim more. You make him do more pull-ups. It ain't going to fix that cardio problem. He went from the ground to standing up, from the ground, from clinching to back to striking. He went from dynamic to static, dynamic to static. He started to slow down. Now, of course, he also got knee in the body. But you can see that his opponent was ready to go from one position to the next faster. His transitions were faster.
Would you say, like, you guys, I mean, that kind of cardio, obviously you have to maintain it, and that's a big hump to get over, but, like, is there something in there, like, technically that you can do to improve it? I don't know, to break through sooner, or, like, if Bo were to redo that fight, like, could he have done something technically different in training, or is it only the cardio factor of switching from that? I mean,
I think you could always clean up efficiency with technique. You know, like one thing he did, he pulled the guard. He went to guillotine. I think it's a mistake, especially early in the fight. There was plenty of time on the clock. Why pull a guillotine? He had a front headlock. He should have went to chase the back. You know, should have did a go behind. Stay in your wheelhouse. Don't go in the other guy's world, because the second he went for a guillotine, RDR jumped side control and just put him on the bottom, and just, you know, you're not in an efficient position. So I think there's some technical errors definitely contributed to the problem. But you could also see he started to break early. Why? There was a transition from ground to striking. And in my opinion, that transition is very unique. I don't know why. It tires people out. I have no idea why. So I just, one point, said, hey, we're going to drill it every week.
So now that is fully a part of just the regular training regimen now. It's just always one day a week we're at least going to be mixing this. Now, what about for an actual camp? I hear some people say, like, I never hard spar out of camp, or, you know, sometimes they don't hard spar at all during the camp. What is your opinion on hard sparring? How many times should people do it? Should it be a common thing, or are people doing it way too many times? You know, where it's a detriment to their actual health now. Yeah, well, what's your opinion on hard sparring? And one last thing, if they are hard sparring, are you having them spar with the puffy MMA gloves, or are you having them hard spar with the 16-ounce boxing gloves?
Small, like MMA gloves, never hard sparring, because you could really injure each other. So I think that's just touch sparring. You know, you're going to have the benefit of being able to lock your hands, or there's going to be grappling scenarios in there, you know. When it's big gloves, I believe you have to train at every intensity. It's kind of like grappling, right? Do you want to go hard all the time in the grappling room, or do you want to flow roll? Well, I would tell you this. If you flow roll all the time, you might start thinking certain techniques work, but they don't really work under pressure. You might be really surprised one day when you try it in a real intense match that a move you always do when you're flow rolling doesn't work, right? So touch sparring is kind of like the same thing. You could start getting to an illusion where, like, you think this counter works, but it won't work at full speed with a guy trying to hit you for real. So I think hard sparring is something we need to do once in a while to give us a reality check. If I can do it in hard sparring, then I'll certify it. You can do it in touch sparring. But if you can do it in touch sparring and you can't do it in hard sparring, the move doesn't work. Let's weed it out. Okay, so touch sparring is great because you could spar more often without getting hurt. You get a lot of more experience on the mat, okay, striking. The bad thing is it can create bad habits and create the illusion. You know, you can end up being one of those, like, traditional martial arts guys who thinks he's beating up like 30 people at once. Like, it becomes like, it feeds your ego. You think you're doing something so good. Dude, if those were real shots, it wouldn't work. So we need a reality check once a week, once every 2 weeks for the guys who are less experienced. That's why if you're very experienced, I ask for less hard sparring. The more experienced you are, the less you have to spar hard. Because you know what fighting is. You know that wouldn't work in a fight. You know what I mean? But if you're a guy with like 2-3 fights, you might think, oh, spinning like this or jumping like that is good. Well, not in hard sparring. Try it in hard sparring. Try when we're going full speed. You're going to get a reality check. So the guys who've been reality checked, you know, they've been in fights, they know the dangers of fighting, they don't have to spar as much at a high intensity, because I want to save them for the fight. Okay, so I've seen guys lose the fight in practice. They got their nose busted up in the fight. In practice. Then 4 or 5 weeks later, they're fighting. They get hit in the nose. Their nose is busted. Well, if he didn't spar so hard, he wouldn't have busted his nose. He could have won that fight. You know what I mean? So, like, you don't want to break your ribs. You don't want to injure your hand and then lose the fight on fight night.
So kind of along those lines. So on one end of the spectrum, we have hard sparring. On another end of the spectrum, we have, maybe like just static drilling. So last week, these guys had Greg Souders from Center Jiu-Jitsu talking about constraints-led approach. So this topic's kind of fresh on our minds right now. Not to ask specifically about CLA, but just more kind of on that continuum where it's like there's static drilling, maybe some drilling with resistance, maybe some positional sparring. How do you approach that, and like how much do you like to have guys spend in kind of in each of those areas of the spectrum?
For the guys who are more experienced, I tell them we call it situation or positional sparring. I just refer to it often as like situation. Pick a situation. You want to work on your chest-to-chest passing from half guard? Start there. The more experienced guys, I tell them, look, whatever you want to work on now, do it. Today I'm showing this and that, but if you have something specific, because I think the more experienced you are, the more I give you freedom to direct your own training. Okay, but the beginners, let's say the guys who are less experienced, I won't call them beginners, but the guys who are less experienced, I put them in a situation. So if that day I'm teaching De La Riva, we're going to start the practice with positional sparring from De La Riva. Why? I want them to use or attempt to use what they learned that day. That way it's going to be in their memory forever. Right? So if let's say I'm teaching X guard, we're going to start in X guard. If I'm teaching body lock passing, we're starting the rounds in body lock passing. We're going to do 2 or 3 rounds of positional sparring of whatever technique I taught that day. Then after that, I like them to wrestle standing. So start standing. I always tell guys, warm up on the ground 2 or 3 rounds, and then we start standing up on our feet. We're trying to score takedowns, and we're trying to continue the match on the ground. Now, some guys, maybe they wrestle, because in Tristar, we give every day of the week, you can wrestle if you want to. You don't have to, it's not a particular day. If you wrestle 2-3 times, you might not, in the next practice, you might not want to wrestle at all. Just stay on the ground the whole time. So you could do positional sparring, or you can do free rolling. I give a lot of freedom. I let the guys kind of choose what they want to do when they're more experienced. When you're less experienced, I tell you what to do more often. But if a guy's a black belt, I sit there and I talk to him. Hey, what do you want to work on? Oh, I'm having trouble here and there. Okay, let's focus on that then. So I really want the fighters to have a back and forth, because the thing is, when you're a black belt, in my opinion now, you become like a partner in the gym. You got to tell me what you think we should do. I can't just be one guy directing all the time. I feel like nobody has that much bandwidth to think about everybody's situation.
What's your opinion on the idea that static drilling is essentially useless for skill in competition?
Well, I will tell you this. Look at the greatest wrestling clubs in the world. They all do static drilling. Look at all the best judo clubs in the world. They all use static drilling. There's no wrestling club in the world. Like if you go to Russia and you go to Iran to train wrestling, do you think they're not going to make you drill? Of course they're going to make you drill. They warm up with technique.
So then the counter to that is that their drilling always has a level of resistance to it. It's not like jiu-jitsu where there's no resistance. I wouldn't know, but are the best wrestling clubs having resistance to a single and a double and these different things? Or are they actively trying to sprawl? Are they actively, resisting?
No, they drill just like we do.
Oh, really?
Yeah, of course. They might do some duck unders. They might do some arm drags. Like, I train with Georges St-Pierre. He's a world champion in freestyle wrestling. He won the silver medal at the Atlanta Games. And, when he runs a practice, there is some static drilling, definitely. And then there is some games, there's some kind of like situations, we call it, or positional sparring. Like, he'll tell you, okay, start with an underhook. If you want to start with an underhook, let's start this round with an underhook. Then he'll be like, okay, now let's move to single leg. Let's start the round in a single leg. And there's definitely putting the student in a position and making him work live. But there's without a doubt some drilling. I mean, find me one judo club in the world. Find me one wrestling club in the world that doesn't do static drilling. I've never seen it personally.
You hear that, Greg Souders? Find one. We challenge you. Find one.
Yeah, bring it on. Do you think like not just drilling, but like, hitting high repetitions of the same, like I've seen in some judo or wrestling practices where they just go like arm throw, or like inside trip, like 50 times in a row on like 2 different guys. Like, do you think there's value to that? I feel like there definitely could be. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I think, look, I think there's a certain number of reps you do and you've plateaued. Like more reps just won't help. And I think you got to feel that, you know, like you got to feel like this is the maximum speed. And if I did it 1,000 times more, it wouldn't help. But there's definitely, let's say, I don't know, you didn't drill Toriando for 4 months, let's say, because you know Toriando well and you're at maximum speed and you do Toriando like you in your sleep, you know. But there might be a time where you do Toriando, you haven't done it in a while, you've been maybe doing a lot of body lock passing and you haven't hit that move in a while. You might get some benefit from drilling it, you know, but you'll never forget to do Toriando. Once you've done it at a certain level, for the rest of your life, you're going to know how to do Toriando. You're going to be able to hit a double leg for sure. But if, let's say, I have a competition coming up, I might drill it now to sharpen up and get it a millimeter faster because the window of opportunity to hit it is so small, right? So it's got to be, like I always tell people, in fighting, an inch is a mile. A second is an hour. You know, you can't think, oh, it's just a second faster. Yeah, a second faster is a lot. An inch closer is a lot, you know? So think about it like that. A second in fighting is an eternity.
That's pretty interesting that you say that because Elton, we talk about that a lot actually. So, for example, we call it like, you know, an exit after, we'll say any strike, across a jab or whatever. So one common thing is don't get heavy on the lead heel so you can actually pull back. And then it's like, or maybe I want to pivot. Maybe I step outside prior to my cross. So now on the retraction, I already have that angle to pivot. And he's like, you know, it might not take that much time off physically or like literally, but we might need that quarter of a second, that millisecond essentially. So it's interesting to hear you say that. But yeah, you have other questions, Elton?
Yep. So you mentioned earlier like that whenever you and George started training with John, that one of the big takeaways that you took was just a general approach to strategizing and game planning. And so originally I was going to ask kind of where are you at on the spectrum of game planning? Like there's some people who, you know, game plan extensively, and there's some people who are just like, I'm very inspired by John Wooden. And one of the things that he used to say is like, he doesn't do film study because his perspective was, I have no control over what they're going to do, but I have complete control over what we're going to do. I think both perspectives are valid, but you know, given that when you mentioned that you guys learned strategizing from John, I was wondering if you could maybe detail kind of what were the components of that, and maybe how it's evolved over time.
Well, you know, it's funny because John is the most systematic guy I've ever met in my life. Like, it's incredible. He'll take a young kid, train him for 3 years, and that kid now can beat a black belt. Like, it's crazy how good he can make a student in such a short period of time. And how does he do it? Well, he's a big believer in static drilling. Like, he basically gives you a system. If this, then that. If the guy does this, we're going to do that. If he does this, it's if this, then that. There's an algorithm to his system. Just because, look, who's the most successful grappling coach ever? In my opinion, is John. Okay. Now, I'm biased. I love John. He's my friend. He's my trainer. In my opinion, though, he's the most successful in MMA, in jiu-jitsu. In my opinion, he's taken guys from a young age and he's disrupted the jiu-jitsu world like nobody else. And how does he do it? Well, he's super systematic. It's if this, then that. If the guy does this, you do that. If he's standing like this is what you're going to do. If he's standing like that, he has an algorithm. And he takes this algorithm. And once you run through that algorithm, he gives you enough breathing room that you have some creativity. Okay, so first he kind of trains you a bit like a robot. And then he tells you, look, well, here, there's variations. There's a gray area. You got to kind of like improvise. You know, you got to... So it's kind of like going to school, right? They teach you how to think. They teach you how to process information. But after a while, you have to kind of become a bit of a philosopher. You got to start thinking on your own. You got to break the rules. There is a gray area, and creativity does matter. You know, creativity, discovery does matter.
So more specifically, when getting ready for fights, and so you have a specific opponent, the strategy and game planning process for that, like what does that look like?
Well, unlike John Wooden, John Danaher, he really wants to see what the other guy does. And what the other guy does is super important. Like, if you're fighting, I don't know, if you're fighting, because MMA is really wild, right? There's so many different type of fighters. If you're fighting a Machida, Lyoto Machida, would you approach it the same way, your preparation, as if you're fighting a Damian Maia? No, obviously not, right? They're very different fighters. So it doesn't make sense to me to say that, oh, I don't care what the other guy's doing. I have a perfect system and it can't, as long as I perfect, because John Wooden was like, hey, I have the perfect system. I only care about my team, what we're going to do. I don't look at what the other team does. Well, you know what? In basketball, it's pretty limited. You have to put the ball in the net. And I know there's a possibility of plays and they can have a different style of play. But MMA is very different, man. There's so many ways to die. There's so many ways to fight. There's so many things. Like if I was fighting Nick Diaz, I wouldn't worry about guillotine defense, right? Because he never does guillotine. Okay? If you're training guillotine defense for months on end before you're fighting a Nick Diaz, it doesn't make any sense. But John Wooden would tell you, oh, I don't care what the other guy's doing. I want to be able to defend my neck if I'm ever in trouble. Well, it doesn't make any sense. You're spending enormous amount of resources on something it's not going to be a problem on fight night. Now, if you're fighting Nate Diaz, his brother, he has a great guillotine. You don't want to put your arm under his neck. You know, we were talking about that earlier today. He has a great guillotine. So would you approach taking down a fighter who doesn't guillotine versus a fighter who does guillotine the same way? John would adjust, right? He'd be like, look, they do this, we're going to do that. You know, it's got to make sense. The two sides have to make sense. So how much energy are you going to put in guillotine defense? Well, it depends on what the other guy does. You know, what's his bread and butter? We're going to take it away from him.
To make it clear, we definitely study a lot of tape. We it's pretty funny. So
John Wooden's a basketball coach.
Yes.
I've never.
Right.
Okay, and he refuses to look at any other team.
Well,
Like he just only my guys are going to do this and that's it.
I mean, to be fair, this is, I don't remember when he was coaching basketball. I want to say it was like in the 60s, the 70s. So this is a while back. I used to agree with that approach. I've completely gone to
Do
the
you used
other
to
end of the
agree with
spectrum.
the only focus on our own thing approach?
No, that's
or-
what I'm saying. Like there was a time that I agreed with that.
Oh, okay.
Now I'm on the complete opposite end of the spectrum. Now we studied. I like to think very deeply. Yeah.
Was that guy successful?
He was the greatest basketball coach in the history of high school.
Yeah.
yeah, no, it wasn't. It's just a random guy.
Well, I mean, imagine he was a terrible successful. It's like
He was at.
it
he was
never
a
worked.
He was a coach at UCLA. If I remember correctly, he was there for like 11 years. They won like the national championship like 7 years in a row. I mean, it's like
It was unprecedented.
yeah,
It was
right.
insane.
And
Okay.
I mean, and this was in college where you have a constant rotating door of who's on your team. So there's one common denominator.
okay,
right?
so the coach was
Yeah.
clearly doing something right. Okay.
Yeah, college basketball.
College, yes. Yeah.
College. College.
Okay, college, not high school.
You know, with that said, like one of my favorite boxers is Rigondeaux. And Rigondeaux, for those of you who don't know, he's a Cuban boxer. He won 200 fights in a row in Cuba, lost a couple of fights, 2-3 fights, and then he won 200 more fights in a row in Cuba. So he's one of the most successful boxers in history. And he was fighting Nonito Danaher, a killer, like a knockout, like a guy with a dynamite in his hands. He's fighting pro now. He's going to America. He wants to show America his boxing skills. And I remember the interview. They were interviewing Nonito Danaher, and they were having the translator ask Nonito. Excuse me, not Nonito. They were asking Rigondeaux, the Cuban fighter with 200 wins in a row and lost a couple of fights and won 200 more wins in a row. Like this guy's an incredible win streak. They asked him, "Hey, have you looked at any footage of your opponent?" And he was shocked. He was like, "What? What do you mean?" He's like, "Did you watch the guy you're fighting?" He's like, "What do you mean watch the guy? Like, did you look at what he does?" He was
Disgusted.
completely freaked out. He's like, "People watch the guy they're gonna fight." Like they go actually scout the guy to see how he fights before they fight him. People do that. They're like, yeah, of course, like there's millions of dollars on the line here in American boxing. He was completely like, wow, that's weird. Why would you go and look at the guy you're fighting? Like, I'm the best boxer. How like, it's crazy. Some guys don't do any analysis, and they're very successful. So that's why I also think you can overdo it with analysis. Like, I think there's a happy middle. Why? Because, the guy never threw a spinning back fist in his entire career. You get in the fight with him, he hits you with a spinning back fist. Well, I didn't think he could ever do that. Exactly. You overanalyzed, like we got to leave some breathing room for creativity and improv,
Do you think like there's some benefit to like maybe the fighter or the grappler, like if the athlete themselves doesn't want to look at the guy he's fighting, I don't know, build him up or whatever, but like for the coach to look at him and just be like, not tell him like, hey, your guy's good at this, but just be like, do the situation, just to make sure he gets good at, I don't know, defending this or that move. Yeah. Is that maybe like something along the lines of that boxer? Like, do you think?
Yeah, I think the coaches have to watch the opponent, not the fighter. The fighter doesn't have to. And I think some fighters like to, and I think that's fine. But the one reason why I don't like the fighter to watch too much is because he thinks he's going to do that on fight night. No. He's not necessarily going to do that on fight night. Okay, so I'll give you, for instance. Let's say the guy, I'm watching a guy, and this guy has a crazy good single leg. He just gets the single leg, and he gets the fight to the ground on a regular basis. That's his move. He's like a Damian Maia, drops to his knees and grabs a single leg. Well, guess what? I'm going to make my fighter in the practice room do a lot of single leg situation. We're going to put him in a single leg situation, situational sparring, and we're going to start with single leg a lot. And he might not know why, but I might tell him, hey, look, the guy likes to single. He likes to go into the single leg. It's hard to underhook a guy who grabs a single. So we're going to do a lot of single leg. Now, did he decide that? No, I decided that. Why? Because I'm the trainer. I'm deciding how much time and energy we're going to put in what, because there's so many things you can cover in MMA. You can't cover it all. So let's cover what's most important. And that's something the fighter doesn't have to know about. He just has to know that I told you the guy's good enough. He's good at single. It's a habit of his. We're going to make sure we spend a lot of time with guys who have a similar style to him, who's going to grab your leg in a single. And that's kind of that simple.
Along the lines of analysis, I remember, I think George was on Joe Rogan podcast once, and he told this story about in the preparation for the rematch with BJ Penn. Hopefully I get the details of this right, but what I remember is that he said that there was somebody who would watch like frame rates and basically would kind of measure different things based on the number of frames that happen between point A and point B. And the way I remember is that he said what they noticed is that BJ Penn had a very fast reaction time, one of the fastest reaction times in the UFC at the time, but had a very slow recovery rate. And so basically the takeaway from that was basically just overwhelm him with information, throw a lot of feints, get him to react a lot, but then take advantage of the slow recovery. I was wondering if, I thought that was a pretty creative, analytical approach. I was wondering if you had any other stories kind of along those lines of just things kind of thinking outside the box.
Well, I have one of my students, his name is Michael Fisher, and he would count the frames on footage. So when BJ would throw a punch, he would count the frames, and he taught me how to count frames. And you'd be surprised. One guy who throws a right hand might have 2 or 3 more frames than another guy. That means the guy with lesser frames is faster. So you have to be careful of his right hand. That guy has a blindingly fast right hand. But we noticed that BJ Penn's punching would slow down after wrestling exchanges. So if you count his frames after he's got up off the ground, it's significantly slower. So in round 1 of the fight, we decided, hey, don't actually take BJ down because he's going to rest on the ground. So round 1 was just like, get him to defend the takedown, but don't actually take him down, even if you feel you could. So if you look at round 1, George had him up against the fence, kind of working his legs. And we just want to take away his pop. Why? Because BJ Penn, if he hits you on the button in round 1, that's when he does all the damage. If you watch BJ Penn's fights closely, most of the time where he hurts somebody, it's in the first 2 rounds. So we're like, oh, let's make him wrestle the first 2. Let him slow down. After a few minutes of wrestling, we know that statistically he slows down when he starts throwing punches. And lo and behold, in the later round, George started striking with him, and he had the speed advantage for sure.
That's super interesting. So with your fighters or your brother as well, like, are you coming up with a game plan on how to win, or are you giving suggestions and then them as the fighter, they're like, oh, I kind of like that. Like, how does the actual game plan for a fight work between the relationship of you as a coach and them as a fighter? Are you just, giving it to them straight, or, what goes on in that?
Well, I don't like to go too far into a game plan. Like I said, there has to be a breathing room for the guy to adapt. So here's what I always tell guys. You have an idea, I have an idea of how the fight should go. Okay, let's bring in somebody who has similar abilities to your opponent, and we try your ideas and we try my ideas, and we see what works. Because here's the thing, I always tell people, look, sometimes I'm coaching the guys grappling or whatever, and I'm like, hey, do this, do that, and I go, you know what? Let me try it. Give me the guy. Let me get in the guy's leg, and let me try to wrestle him. And I'm like, wait a second, you know what? My advice wasn't so great. Let me try something else. So I really believe that coaches, sometimes we forget what it's like to be on the mat, So let's observe and let the results kind of dictate who's right. So me, I like to suggest. I have opinions. I always tell my students, do what I ask you for 2 or 3 weeks. If it doesn't work after 2 or 3 weeks, throw it. I won't ask you again to do that move. I won't ask you again to attempt this strategy. But give me like a grace period of 2 to 3 weeks. Let me work out the kinks. Let me see if I can figure it out. And there's a trial and error process. And it might not be for you. Some guys it works for them. Sometimes it blows my mind. Like, techniques will work for one guy and not for another. Like, I trained Ethan for many years and Taza for many years. I remember one time asking Ethan, hey, Ethan, how come you never do the leg lock sequence? He's like, it doesn't work for me. I was like, you know what? It works for Taza, but maybe for you it doesn't work. He has another approach, So he's had a lot of success with a different approach.
Let's touch into that a little bit. Ethan being, your
Technique's not working for me.
Yeah. So, do you remember the first time you ran into Ethan? What was your...
The worst day of his life, bro.
I know, it was all downhill.
It's downhill, man.
Downhill from there.
Tristar subscription went through the floor, the building lost value, everything. Yes.
So, was he a super dedicated student right away? Did you see some...
So this, how Firas is like, try my technique for 2 weeks. And if
about
it doesn't
you.
work, fine. is oddly enough, those 2 weeks I'd miraculously get injured. I wouldn't show up. No, sorry. It's my job to inject jokes and stupid things into this podcast. But yeah, that's a great little.
Yeah. So like, what was it like? Obviously, there's a famous story with Ethan and Taza receiving their brown belts in 3 years and totally pissing off John because, John has such a high standard for, brown belts under the lineage. So enlighten us, please.
Well, listen, Taza and Ethan were super dedicated. I think we spent like 8 hours a day together. I see these guys more than my wife at that time. Like I'm with them all day long.
8 hours a day outside of the gym.
Yeah, that's the time outside the gym. No, I mean, we spent a lot of time together, and they got to a point where they were good enough to go train with John. Now, they also got to a point where nobody want to compete with them because they were purple belts beating black belts, and the black belts didn't want to give them any super fights. They didn't want to give them any, matches. Why? Because there's no upside. If they lose to a purple belt. If they win, they beat a purple belt. So I wanted to promote them because one, they'd win their division. And I thought they were more than ready for brown belt, but John has a higher standard. He wanted to make them wait, and I did it. I made a mistake. I did it without asking him permission because at that time, I've been a black belt for longer than 6 years. So I'm supposed to be able to do it the way the way I think is right. Because before that, I would always check with him. Now that one time, I did feel merited. That year that you got your brown belt, I think you tapped like 4 or 5 black belts that year.
I actually. The year I got my brown belt, I won silver brown belt worlds, and
right.
I think obviously I'm biased in this, but I think I won the match I lost via some stupid thing. But obviously, I'm silver brown belt worlds, and it was like a few months after I got the belt anyway. So, but I get staying at purple belt longer. There was a period where I was even there before they legalized jiu-jitsu in Montreal, where I was like competing 3-4 times a month just at local shows, SAUs, grappling industries. But yeah, then I'd have to like travel to compete, and no one would take a match with a purple belt who's worth going out for a match. But yeah, that was a fast turnaround for sure. But yeah, the early dude, I still look at those days as like the golden era of coming up in Tristar. It was like George, the MMA program was in full swing. I was like, the skinny 135er, Louis, Ayman, Mandel, they'd beat the crap out of me. You'd beat the crap out of me like every single time. Like, what are they doing? And it's the same thing. Like you were talking about your intro to jiu-jitsu training with John, like, oh my God, this guy subbed me a million times. For me, that was like with Neil. Like, he just subbed me a million times, and I'm like...
Who's Neil?
Neil, you met him today. He had the dreads, short guy, just always smiling.
Okay.
Perma high.
Oh, yeah.
Freaking love this guy. Great, just all smiles, super positive, and yeah, he's good at jiu-jitsu.
He just messed you up in the beginning.
Yeah, because I wanted to originally do MMA, and Louis actually was like, "Ethan, you're retarded. You don't know any jiu-jitsu. You can't do MMA. Neil, come here, fuck up Ethan for like 10 minutes." I'm like, "Dude, come on. I'm gonna be fine.
Dog.
I'm gonna fight my way out of this." And Neil proceeds to sub me. I don't need God knows how many times in 5-10 minute round. I'm like, "All right, fine, I'll try this." And but yeah, that's what my intro to is similar to you training with John, and that was just the golden era for me, like seeing Tristar in full swing, and it's evolved so much over the years with both the MMA program, the Jiu-Jitsu program, obviously, to the point where you can't have them at the same time. I remember it used to be we'd have Jiu-Jitsu and MMA, and all the MMA and Jiu-Jitsu guys there would be enough room on the mats. Now there's no room. You saw the mats today.
Dude, I walked in and had to be like over 100 people in the MMA session.
It's insane.
And then they had to do jiu-jitsu right after. Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, like it's fight week, especially. It's popping off. There's visitors from everywhere. But like even a normal week, mats are packed. The cage is packed. And yeah, and then they all, I saw it today. You're like, all right, mops, get the next class going. It's sick.
Sick.
And then jiu-jitsu, and it's just busy. I love seeing it.
Dude, business is booming. You want to invest in the Simple Man podcast?
Why not? Well, we're going to be opening a second gym. So there's going to be 2 Tristar gyms on the Montreal Island. It's going to be a very big gym. Also, it's going to be a big deal. Yeah, it's going to be similar in size. It's almost completely built already. We're going to be adding more mat space to the original gym, but like you saw, it's a busy gym. Yeah, there's lots of turnover. But we used to have one group. The MMA group and the Jiu-Jitsu group was in one class. Now we separated them because the MMA guys have different needs, and we have so many bodies that Let the jiu-jitsu guys get ready for their competition. Let the MMA guys get ready for. We're more specific in our preparation.
At night, they kind of train together, right?
Yeah, at night it'll be more of a.
You know, I have a question about that actually, because Elton just opened his 4th location. I own a gym in New Jersey, B Team Jiu-Jitsu New Jersey. Do you have business partners? How did you grow that gym to what it is today?
I'm not really like a business savvy guy. Like I do have, I do run businesses, but I like being on the mat. That's where I enjoy my time. So I think like if I do my job well on the mats, people always want to sign up, and the gym just kind of grows organically because the guys they're enjoying the training. They're enjoying the atmosphere, the talent there is on the mat, and you have to cultivate that and make. So my whole thing is like, if I give the best training possible, it's always going to do well.
So one thing I was curious about is kind of when you look at the history of, you were talking about watching like UFC 2 and being inspired by that, right? And so when you look at kind of like the evolution of MMA, it's like, there's the jiu-jitsu era, then the wrestlers came, and then the kickboxers that had takedown defense came. And then I think, obviously, I think George was a pioneer, right? I mean, like he really changed the meta, and then that really kind of changed the direction of how people trained after him. Where do you see that going next? Like, what do you think is going to be the meta in maybe like, 3 years from now? And can you think of anybody in the UFC now that you think is a representative of that?
I think it's going to go full circle. I think the jiu-jitsu guys are going to come back and dominate one day, like completely. And I'll tell you why. Okay? Right. They're going to... Jiu-jitsu is so young compared to wrestling, boxing. It's so young compared to Muay Thai in terms of like mainstream, being mainstream. And now it's becoming I think from what I saw last, it was the 2nd fastest growing sport in the world. Like it's so... Like jiu-jitsu is coming up quick. And there's so many new ways to go about things. Like, I think in the future, they're going to perfect how they get the fight to the ground in jiu-jitsu ways. They're not going to use direct wrestling. Sure, there's always going to be double leg, single leg, body lock throws, trips. That's always going to exist. But they're going to find a way to get wrestlers to the ground in ways that wrestlers are not familiar, like rolling for knee bars, jumping into a leg entanglement of some sort. And that's going to really surprise wrestlers. And there's going to be a time where they're going to marry wrestling and jiu-jitsu so well that you cannot avoid the ground.
So do you want to add to that? Or?
Okay, go ahead.
So I'm thinking like I've never thought of it as something like that. Like the, grappling, jiu-jitsu grappling, not wrestling grappling. Like, seated versus standing, aiming for subs has so much room to grow. Like you've seen over the past 5-10 years, it's exploded. It's nowhere near its ceiling. It's not even like a world renowned sport, like in terms of, sports like wrestling and these striking sports. They're as old as the Olympics. Jiu-jitsu is like just kind of blossoming. It's still coming into full swing. UFC is moving in as big companies like jumping on the sport as it's growing. I feel like sometimes, like if Oliveira, for example, like his jiu-jitsu, he can like fall back on it so well. It's almost like a way out for him, and that'll one day maybe like that hole in everyone else's game. Like if you look at, I don't know, Islam, like he can't really fall back on his jiu-jitsu because Islam is going to hold him down and sub him, versus like Chandler. If Chandler cracks him once, he falls back, pulls guard, he's safe because Chandler can't jump on him, he can't finish it. It's almost like a way out. But yeah, I've never looked at it like that. Like it's a sport that's nowhere near its ceiling. Whereas these other striking sports, grappling, standing grappling, has been around for so long that they are really. I never thought of that. But
real quick, I want to give you a gift, right? So all of our guests get a gift. I forgot to get you one, but we live in
I've known
Austin.
this guy 20 years. He never gave me one gift.
Exactly.
Now you're giving me a gift, and I just met you today.
I'll give you a gift.
I know who's my favorite host on this podcast.
We have met before, just so you know, but it's okay.
Whoops, my bad.
So Anaconda Fightwear is a sponsor of the podcast, and so I just guessed a size, so hopefully it fits you.
extra large.
Extra large.
Extra jack.
But
let me see. I gotta see this.
so it's, in my opinion,
yeah.
the best jiu-jitsu brace on the market. There's straps that keep it in place, so it doesn't slide up and down. There's some padding in there. highly recommend it. So just hopefully you don't need to use it, but in the event that you do, I know you have a great stability program that I want to ask you about. Sure. But you know,
Thank you guys.
yeah, for sure, no problem. I guess you know, you have your brother fighting this weekend. It's so awesome to see Eamon's kind of rise, kind of like a second peak, because he used to train with us at the Blue Basement. He like would sleep at Nikki's house for, you know, a couple weeks at a time.
We'd make that drive together often.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dude, I would drive him sometimes too. It was like, because I would go to Monroe, pick you guys up, whatever, and then drive up together. And then, you know, he's on this crazy run now, about to fight Jose Aldo. I guess, what was the relationship like between you guys? Because he's was he 8 years younger than you, or?
Yeah, he's 8 years younger than me, and you know, he went to college, and I was training George, Rory. I was training a lot of guys who had big fights, so I didn't have time for him at that time. You know, so he was kind of training on his own, doing his own thing. And then at one point, I realized, you know, I gotta start taking control of his career a bit, or else I'm gonna, you know, miss any opportunity to do that. You know, time is running out, and you know, 15 years ago, I was just way too busy, but I had huge fights on the horizon that needed my attention. So now I've kind of like focused on him the last few years, and us working together, it's been really good. We've been successful working together. I had him working with other trainers, but I felt like I needed to go and take the reins and kind of like figure out what's his style, you know, because my brother's a hard worker. But I always tell people, look, there's hard work will get you to a level, but discovering your style is a whole other thing. So I always say there's two things to a fighter: what level he's at and what style he uses. And I think that most people never understand that you have to develop your style for you. Like, I know it sounds a bit crazy, but I feel like if Muhammad Ali tried to fight like Mike Tyson, it would have never worked for him. If Tyson tried to fight like Ali, it would have made no sense. But I do believe that some guys will train with Ali and think, oh, I have to fight like Ali. No, it doesn't make sense for you to fight like Ali. You don't have the same talents. You don't have the same strengths. You have to do it a different way. So I felt like my brother was working really hard, but I had to kind of like take the hold of his training to make sure he finds his style. And over the years, we started discovering his style more and more, and it's been working for him.
That was actually something I wanted to ask about, because in my experience, it's something I've noticed is that once a fighter really nails down what their style is and how they want to express, you know, the art from themselves, that's when they really start to accelerate, because now, you know, rather than looking at the 100%, they're able to look at the 20% that works for them and go deep on that, as opposed to just trying to do, you know, more and more and more new things. So I was just kind of curious, as your, you know, in your experience as a coach, how do you help people find that? Like, how do you, like, you know, do you have some general kind of points that you look for, that you talk about, that helps them get there?
I think like the first 5 years of your training, you should really get good at the basics. And then from there, you're going to decide if you're an armbar guy, if you're a smash passer, if you're a leg locker, if you're a guillotiner. And then once you discover what your talent relies in, then you also have to slowly go outside your comfort zone and develop new wrinkles to your game. You don't want to just be cemented in one game. So it's an interplay between the two, but it starts with the basics. You have to have an incredible understanding of the basics. Think about when you go to school, right? They don't teach you algebra right away. No, you start with basic math. Oh, this guy has a talent for math. Push this guy towards calculus. It makes sense for him. He's really, really good at math. Whereas if I put you in a math class and you don't do so well, but you're doing really well in biology, or you're doing really well in geography, for whatever reason, well, I might push you in that realm. You know what I mean? So for me, I like to see how my students does with the basics. And then, you know, it's like Taza loved the leg locks. Ethan loves getting on top and pressure passing. I let them work with that. You know, like if you had Marcelo Garcia in your practice room and you didn't know he's Marcelo Garcia, and he was telling you, I like playing butterfly guard, but you're a 10th planet guy. Are you going to tell him, no, you got to play rubber guard? It would be crazy. Let him find his way. You know, if I had Ali in my practice room and I didn't know he's Muhammad Ali, and he likes to circle towards the power side, and it works, but it doesn't make sense. The book of boxing says that's an error. But he has the reaction time, he has the movement. It works for him. I wouldn't tell him no. You know, so certain things Roy Jones does, if you didn't know he was Roy Jones and you saw him boxing, be like, hey, that's an error. He has his hand down. It works for him. It works for him. He can do it his way. But they didn't teach him that way. He learned to fight like everybody else, the basics. And then he discovered what works for him. So I'm a big believer in letting your student develop who he is.
So kind of looking at that perspective, and then also what you mentioned earlier about how you think the meta of MMA is going to come full circle back to jiu-jitsu. So let's say hypothetically, Ethan, he's like, you know what? I decided I'm going into MMA, right? Where do you like? What would that, just off the top of your head? What would that progression look like?
Well, MMA is not there yet. You know, it's not, sorry. I mean, jiu-jitsu is not there yet. I think there's going to be solutions to people shooting in our legs. There's going to be new chokes, new ways to do the same old thing, but in a way that's too dangerous for the wrestler to grab your leg. Way too dangerous. Like, we're going to get there. Like, now you grab a guillotine, the guy jumps to side control. It seems like there's no real good answer. We're going to jiu-jitsu practitioners are very smart. They will find an answer eventually. Wrestlers will shoot the legs. They'll jump to side control. They'll jump their legs to the opposite side of the head, and they're going to get choked. And it's going to become unreliable to grab the legs and tackle a fighter down. So then the grapplers and the wrestlers are going to have to strike. And then the grapplers are going to find ways to get wrestlers down to the ground. We're talking about it today. Like, you know, why don't grapplers headlock wrestlers? You know, even if he takes my back, so what? I could roll into his legs, etc. I think these things are coming. These things are coming. And it might take some time, but there's guys like me out there who do jiu-jitsu and do MMA, and they're like, they want to cross it over. But when you go to a jiu-jitsu coach, most of the time, they have no idea about the problems we're seeing in MMA. So they're kind of just solving problems in jiu-jitsu. So that's going to be, once more jiu-jitsu coaches are going into MMA, you're going to see a huge change.
I think the real question that Elton's trying to ask is, we have a pure grappler, an elite level grappler. How do you turn this guy into? Yeah.
Or hypothetically, if there's a guy named Damien, right?
Like,
how it's going to work.
Slightly less good at grappling.
like how do you? What would your roadmap be to try to get this person to the highest level in the UFC?
I would tell you this. Okay, I would do this.
Retire.
Quit before you get started.
Seriously, I'll make him do a lot of shadow boxing. Like, shadow boxing would be the work. Like, you'd have to shadow box an hour a day before we even get working. If he's serious about his training, I would make him shadow box an hour a day. And then I'll make him spar with guys who are not as good as him. Like, guys who are even more beginner. Or like, I don't know what level you're at. Well, like, whatever level you're at, he has to spar with guys lesser than him. Now, imagine I did that with a grappler who's a guy who's a striker, and I'm trying to convert him to grappling. Tell me if I'm crazy, okay? Tell me if I'm crazy. Imagine I have a fighter A. Fighter A, he's a really good kickboxer. Very little ground. And we want to train him on the ground, okay? And I have fighter B. Fighter B, same thing. He's a very good kickboxer, not very good on the ground. He's not very good. Okay. Fighter A, I make him roll with guys who are not as good as him. I make him drill every day for an hour. And then I make him roll with guys he could beat. And as he could beat those guys, I find him harder and harder. But he always has an advantage. Fighter B, I put him with the toughest guys. Fighter B is going to be like, everything you taught me is useless. None of it works, man. Every time I try it, they beat me. Like, he tries something you taught him, and he just, like, has no belief in it whatsoever. He's just getting beat up every day. Fighter A, everything I taught him works. He has some problems with it, but he's tinkering around. He's playing around with it. He's perfecting it, and every day he's getting the submission. He's getting the pass. He's getting the pin. He's getting the takedown. He's having success. Well, his confidence grows. He believes in it more. Well, let me give you somebody a little bit harder to tap. Oh, well, you know what? I have more familiarity with winning, so I want that challenge. So I slowly raise his challenge level. But fighter B, when he competes, he's gonna be like, I have no belief in my double leg whatsoever. I have no belief in my ability to armbar or triangle or guillotine, because I'm always getting killed when I do it. So imagine I'm teaching somebody how to strike. Every time he throws a jab, he gets his jaw clocked. Every time he throws an uppercut, he gets countered. Like, he's gonna like, nothing I do works. So yeah, nothing you do works because the guy's more experienced than you. I gotta bring you to that level, and then it'll work on that guy. So how do I up your offense quickly? I like to put my fighter with my guy who's learning with somebody he could beat. So that's why I believe that you need all levels in the practice room. All levels. You can't just have studs in the practice room. It's important to have really good guys in the practice room as well, because you don't want to be the best guy in the practice room all the time. Then there's other problems with that. But one thing, when I want to get a guy really good at something, he hasn't done very much, I actually pick an easier road. I think coaches are like, oh, he needs the best boxer to get good. I don't agree at all. The best boxer is going to cripple him. He'll never become good.
So in the scenario where, like, say you have an elite level grappler, they're transitioning to MMA, they need to pick up. So we're talking specifically about picking up on the striking skills. The approach that you would have with the elite grappler coming in versus somebody who is just coming in new, are those similar or a lot different? Like, what I mean is, like, would the focus that you would have on the striking training be different because they already have a skill set that they're good and that is effective and that they can use, and so we just want to kind of build on top of that or integrate with that?
Well, it depends what the guy needs. You don't have to assess the guy. I think you have to also spar with guys who are better than you. Like, I don't want to make it sound like I think you should always spar with someone who's lesser than you. No, not at all. I just think that both have a pros and cons. So it all depends on the guy who's coming in. What's his fight date? You know, what's his skill set looking like? What direction do I want to take his skill set in to win his next fight? So it's very practical. That's why I tell you, I need every level in the practice room. You know what I mean? So I feel like with every level, I can help the fighter grow. But if I only have one level in the practice room, it's tough.
I guess we'll switch a little bit. So what's your opinion on nutrition and lifting, both in fight camp, which I can pretty much believe that you think nutrition is very important in fight camp, obviously, but what about out of fight camp? Because we have guys like John and Gary that are notorious for believing that nutrition is useless, and it's like, if this cheeseburger is going to stop me from finishing my double leg, then I suck or whatever. Like, so what's your opinion on this?
Guys, I've seen. I remember I was hanging out with Surya Supanjit before he fought for the King's birthday. Okay, so King's birthday is the biggest tournament in Muay Thai. It's all studs from all over the world. They're fighting in Thailand for like a ton of money in front of the king. It's the king's birthday. It's the king's of Thailand's birthday. And I was with Surya Supanjit, and he was smoking and drinking alcohol a few days before. And I was like, Surya, like, you're fighting this week, you know? Like, aren't you going to make weight? And he's like, I don't care. Guy's got 400 fights. Like, I don't care. Sure enough, he went out there and he won the king's birthday. Let me tell you something. He didn't win it by much. He won it by a hair. In the main event, he was fighting a guy from France, a killer French fighter with knockouts, like a killing machine. He won that fight by a hair. And the guy was eating fried food and drinking alcohol, 4 or 5 days earlier.
Imagine if he didn't.
And I was like, he was smoking cigarettes in front of me. And I was like, please, man, like, you got a fight coming. I don't care. Skip to me. I don't care. Translator, tell him I don't care. He doesn't care. Now, I think, like, if you look at George, he would never do that. George would never smoke, or like, he gave himself every millimeter. I prefer you do things right. But if you're much better than the guy, you can't shoot yourself in the foot and still win. I've seen guys do things that are crazy and still win, but they're that much better.
Just on the winning by a hair. I mean, keep in mind, we just ate cheeseburgers right before this podcast, so I got to preface this. But you're like uninjured. You've been doing this for longer than me, and you have been doing this for a whole era, the whole George era. You train, you spar all the time. I know you have like the stability program. I've been lifting, forever, but I recently took it a bit more like seriously, a bit more organized, more like compound lifts and tracking it. We're also speaking in the gym a bit about like how lifting can prevent injuries if you do it right. If you do it wrong, it can make them worse for sure. But if you do it right, it could help. I've had ACL surgery, come back from it. I'm pretty good now, a bit banged up here and there. But can you give me like just maybe some of your takes on lifting to prevent injury, I guess for grappling, but also for MMA, just what your thoughts are?
Yeah, so look, just to put things as simply as possible, look, your body, if you put stress on your body in any way, your body will get stronger. If you put too much stress on your body before your body's adapted, you get injured. Think about it just like that, Stress, is it good or bad? Well, how much stress? There's a right amount of stress. If you overstress your body, you're going to get injured. If you don't stress your body enough, you're going to grow weak. So you have like this Goldilocks zone, okay? Now, why people get injured is because they overwork their body. In the practice room, you're all training. It's not undertraining the problem. You're all training. Everybody's training really, really hard. Everybody's pulling on each other's necks and double-legging each other and throwing each other on the ground. There's a stress. Your body's under stress. And then you got injured. It was too much stress, too much, too soon. Okay, so me, when I go into the weight room, I don't put any stress on my tendons. And I'll tell you why. Okay, tendons recover much slower than your muscles. When I go into the weight room, I want to put the stress on my bones and my muscle, not on my tendons. Why? Don't your tendons need stress? Yes, they need stress. But tendons get less blood circulation than my muscles and bones. Less circulation equals less recovery. That's how I see it. Okay? So me, I don't put stress on my tendons when I'm lifting weights. So everything is the Kelly Starrett type position where everything is off my tendons and on my bones. and on my muscle. Now, you can never get 100% off your tendons and bones. So your tendons will get some stress, and you want them to get some stress. But I'm telling you guys, my approach is that tendons are getting too much stress.
Is this tendons or ligaments?
Tendons and ligaments.
Tendons and ligaments. So how do you lift
Everything.
without... Sorry.
No, go ahead. No, please go ahead.
Yeah, so how do you lift without stressing these things?
Perfect. Imagine you're grappling, right? And when you're grappling, your back is rounded. Would you go do a back squat with your back rounded and lift really heavy, and then your back starts hurting? There's no lifting club in the world that lifts with a rounded back. They all realize, hey, if we push the weights high enough, rounding our back stresses the joints so badly, the joint fails before we can get to higher numbers, right? The knee is the same thing, because the problem with grappling and wrestling is the knee. Everybody blows out their knee. If you blow out your shoulder at 6 weeks, you blow out your knee, man, you're out for a year. So there's a way to position your knee, and it's not complicated, when you're lifting, that you will mitigate the amount of stress on the tendon and on the meniscus. Okay, so everything that's not bone and muscle, I want to minimize the tension. Why? I'm getting so much of that in wrestling. I'm getting so much of that when I do sprints, when I'm doing sled push. So when I'm doing compound lifts, I want to remove it completely because my tendons need to recover. Okay. I also believe that not lifting too heavy is also very smart. So I like sub-maximal weight. Okay. So I use speed on the bar instead of weight on the bar. So imagine I take a weight that's 70% of my max and I do it at a high speed. I go down slow and I explode up when I squat. I'm gonna have as much tension on that bar as if I was lifting my max. Okay, so they worked out the numbers. There's a right amount of weight. If you do it fast, speed. Don't forget, force equals mass times acceleration. F equals ma. Force equals mass times acceleration. I don't need mass. I need mass times acceleration for force. So when I squat down, I explode up. I'm using 70% of my max. I'm not going to hurt my back. I'm not going to have as much recovery time as needed. You're lifting, let's say your maximum lift. Let's make it friendly, okay? Your maximum lift is 100 pounds. You could work with 70 pounds, go down and up with speed, and get the same tension you would as if you were lifting your max. But you won't have the same breakdown in tissue. You won't have the same stress on your joints. You're getting the same tension, but with less drawback. Now you could also do more sets. You could also do more sets, so you could actually get stronger with less injury. Now, if I lift my max, if I put 100 pounds on the bar, let's say 100 pounds is my max, okay, just keep it friendly. I can't go grapple for the next 48 hours, man. My body needs to recover. I just did my max. By definition, you couldn't do any more. That's like your body's taxed. Now, if I do go and roll, my tendons are still recovering. So I'm rolling and I did a butterfly sweep and I hurt my back. Well, it wasn't the butterfly sweep that hurt your back. It's the fact that you taxed out your tendons and your ligaments. They're still recovering. So the butterfly sweep is too much stress. What was too much stress? Lifting your max and then doing butterfly sweeps. That together is too much stress for your body.
There was something interesting that you said during the jiu-jitsu training when we were talking. When we were talking about cardio, that you're like, all the athletes should be doing some type of cardio, whether it's rowing, running, swimming, cycling, assault bike. It doesn't really matter what it is. And I said that do you think, because the whole idea was that cardio is supposed to supplement your grappling because it's a safe way to continue getting that caloric output, right? Mm-hmm. But I said running, isn't that hard on your knees? And you were like, oh, you're stupid if you get hurt running. So I want to hear this.
I've been hurt running.
Because I feel like it is hard on your knees. It's like the constant.
I think my words were, if you get hurt running, you don't know what you're doing. Your coaching is incorrect. The mechanics are incorrect. What's that?
It's a very technical,
yes.
It's a technical movement to run properly and not get hurt. You could run however you want. Yeah, exactly. You're probably gonna get hurt, but it's technical. Like when we have you ever gone running with George? And
of course.
Yeah, there's a whole warm up and it's hard.
Well,
I
understand like the warming up part, but I'm wondering like, all right, long distance running for an hour or whatever, or 30 minutes. Is that not hard on like your meniscus or hard on your joints? The impact?
Look, running has been studied to no end. Okay, like they know a lot about running. And there's something called the pose method. Okay, so they run tests. Me, I'm really concerned about your knees. I'm concerned about your knees, back, and neck. Why? That's why how fighters get injured. If you hurt your ankle, it's not that bad. It's 2-3 weeks, you're out. If you hurt your shoulder, it's not the best thing, but it's 6 weeks, you're out. If you tear your ACL, you're out of training for about a year before we can train for real, like for another competition. It's a huge problem. And not only that, statistically speaking, you break your other knee 2 years later. Statistically speaking, like they told me that, like when George tore his first ACL, I brought the best guys in the world, and they still couldn't prevent him from breaking his other knee 2 years later.
Oh shit! He had double knee surgery.
Yes,
Or
and
two
I
knee
knew
surgeries.
it. They told me, look, I went on a deep dive. I got the best surgeon in the world. I got the best rehab guys in the world. I did a deep dive, and they told me, look, he's probably gonna break the other one 2 years later. It's a ticking time bomb. I'm like, really? Calibrating the two knees is not easy. I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna get the best guys in the world. We're gonna do it. We're gonna try to. Even the best guys in the world couldn't do it. He still broke his second ACL on the other leg 2 years later, and doing just a little move in wrestling. Like it wasn't like a horrible situation. He wasn't like in a freak situation. He just popped it and he was like, I'm not sure. I heard a click. He wasn't sure. It wasn't like a catastrophe or anything. ACL is torn. So, look, running. They've done studies on running. Okay, the method that saves the knee the most from all the running methods, and the last time I studied this was like maybe a year and a half ago. I doubt they've found a better way. Okay, but it's called the pose method of running. POSE. Pose method. Now I use something called the modified pose method. I have a video on it. Okay, strong and stable running for life. I'm not trying to promote it or anything like that, but I use pose method. Why? Because pose method is the safest on the knees. Now the problem with pose, the original pose, is that it's the hardest on the Achilles. I don't want you to rupture your Achilles. That's actually a really bad injury as well. So I have a different kind of foot strike that I use to mitigate the stress on the Achilles. If you run correctly, you will never injure your knee. Never. If you run incorrectly, it's a matter of time before you injure your knee.
So what is this pose method?
Okay, so look, most people when they run, they strike their heel on the ground. Their heel lands first. Why? Because they've been wearing big, thick shoes their entire life. If I took your shoes away, you would land on the ball of your foot. You would never strike your heel on the ground because you would hurt yourself. Because of the cushion, people now, when they run, they're marching. Their feet are out in front of their hips. Okay? When you run, your foot should land underneath your hip. You should actually fall forward. It's a controlled fall forward. They've taken people on the track, okay? They make them run pose method, and then they make them run like how everybody else runs, okay? When they run, the same person running the same track, the same 400 meters, when they use the pose method, their times are shorter and their heart rates are lower. That means they're more efficient. When they make them run across force plates, they have less impact on the ground. So what does that tell us? Less inflammation, less swelling, less injury, less impact completely, and faster and more efficient running.
You have any other questions?
What are the mechanical differences? I think I might be familiar with this. Is this where like you bring the heels up like higher towards the glutes? So then basically whenever it's pretty much impossible to land on your heels because you're coming down on the toes. Your thing will just come.
That's one part of it. The pull, when you pull the heel towards your hips, yes, definitely. But it's really about falling forward. So the faster you want to run, the more you lean forward. So imagine you're standing upright, okay, with your 2 feet together, and somebody gently pushes you from your back forward, and you're gonna fall, but then you put your foot out in front of you. So basically, the relationship between where your foot lands on the ground and where your hips are is really the most important thing. Your hips should be over your foot before your foot touches the ground. Because if your foot is out in front of your hip, it's like you're hitting the brakes. You're slamming the brakes. When my foot lands out in front of my hip crashes into my heel. The weight of my hips is the center of my mass, right? The heaviest part of your body is the hips. So you're crushing the entire system, your heel, your ankle, your knee, your meniscus. It's taking a beating. In my video, I show a side-by-side comparison. Me running like a normal person, and then me running the pose. Like they're side-by-side. So you can't get it wrong. Like once you watch that video, you'll understand. Like you're falling forward. The foot is landing underneath the hips. The hips is like a wrecking ball. It's the heaviest part of your body, right? You don't want your foot to be out in front because it's kind of like pushing the brake and the gas at the same time. It's no good, right? So every time your heel hits the ground, you're jarring your body. That's why you beat up. You get a lot of inflammation in your knees. Then you go grapple and you pop your knee, and you think you hurt your knee because you were grappling. No, it's because you were running. You have inflammation, Inflammation creates instability in the knee. Then you're grappling. And then you try to do a butterfly sweep, or you try to slide your knee out of half guard and you pop your leg. You pop your knee. Well, that's because of inflammation and instability. There's a lot to keeping your knee safe. One of them is running correctly if you're going to run. And 2 is stability training. Stability training is the most important thing.
You ever get into a street fight before?
Unfortunately, yes.
Would you be willing to tell a story?
Sure.
Yeah, what happened?
Oh, well, okay. Well, once upon a time, I was actually, one story, I was in Thailand once. Okay. And I was in a tuk-tuk, and this guy was harassing me. And he was speaking Thai, so I don't know what he was trying to tell me. I think he wanted to get money out of me. He wanted me to go to his shop or whatever, and I was like, hey, man, back off. Now, the way I told him to back off, he got offended.
He's like,
Yeah, for us, like, go fuck yourself.
No, but he was like grabbing onto my arms, like, come, like, I think he wanted me to go in his shop and spend money because I'm a foreigner. I was like, hey, man, no, thank you. And I was telling him in Thai very respectfully, no, thank you, no, thank you, no, thank you. And the guy's like, come to my shop, and I'm like, hey, man, you got to stop. Like, stop grabbing my arm. And he got really offended. So he started yelling at me, and I was like, hey, man, back off. I got out of the tuk-tuk, and I was like, it's like a little taxi, you know. I got out, and I was like, hey, man, like, I have my hands up. Stop.
Street fight, like, put your
Yeah, I was like backing up. I don't want to hit the guy. And he starts yelling at me, telling me off, and he took a swing at me. So when he swung at me, I just dropped down and double-legged him, put him down. I tore a hole in my knee. He ripped my shirt off. Like, I was holding him down, and he was pulling on my clothes, and I was grabbing him by the hair, and I was putting him down. I was like, hey, man, stop. I don't want to hit you. So I let him up, and I was really pissed off now because my toe was bleeding and my knee was bleeding. So I went
on
down
the road?
Yeah, we're on the street. We're literally on the street. And I was really pissed off, and I think he thought, like, he's just going to hit me and I'm not going to do anything about it. Then he took a swing. I slipped my head to the outside and cracked him with a punch in the mouth, broke his teeth. I actually dropped him really bad. He was completely dazed. I revived him. His friends were there. Listen, in Thailand, man, they'll kill you in Thailand. I'm no joke, man. They'll kill you. So I was like, hey, man, listen, I don't want to hit the guy. I was telling the Thais. My friend came in, started translating. I'm like, I don't want to hit the guy. The whole neighborhood came out. They picked him up. They put him on a scooter, and they took him away. And I was like, man, I don't want to hit the guy. I really don't want to hit him. And they were like, well, you know, he wanted you. I was like, I didn't even know what was going on, but the guy took a swing at me. And I had to lay him out, but I had to warn him. I had taken him down at first. I didn't want to hit him because I know if I hit him, it's going to escalate. You know, we're going to start a Muay Thai fight here in the middle of the street.
Yeah, that's so funny. I hear some legends or myths about you locking some students in the cage with you. If you don't want to talk about it, we don't have to talk about it. But
talk about it.
But it's a pretty funny story. So like sometimes you'll be like, you know,
It's defend yourself.
yeah. So what is this that I'm hearing? What is this myth that I'm hearing? This lore?
It's merited every time. Okay, so
Those
they deserve it.
motherfuckers.
Look, let me tell you something, okay? It's so rare I have to give a guy a beating. It's so rare. But it has happened. It has happened. A guy, he steps over the line. You warn him nicely. He steps over the line. You warn him nicely. He steps over the line again. I mean, you kick him out. He comes back a month later begging you to take him back. You take him back. He steps over the line. Well, at this point, I think I'm doing him a favor. I lock him in the cage, put on your gloves, defend yourself. We don't know each other. And if you don't try to defend yourself, I'm going to make it worse. And I feel that that's how some people, and I'm talking, I've trained thousands of people. I've done this maybe a handful of times. I'm not proud of it, but some guys have to learn the hard way. I hate to say it. It sucks. But I think they're better people for it after. I think there's a change in I think it changes their life. And I've had them come back to me, tell me, yeah, you changed my life that day. You made me understand. I'm like, yeah, some guys, man, they need to kiss death on the mouth before they understand. They have to respect other people.
Before they kiss me on the mouth. Yeah.
They call me death.
I get you. So you were you're obviously the older brother of Eamon, but Eamon's obviously, you know, now
They're 4 brothers total, right?
four
4 brothers.
4 brothers. So
Yeah.
like, did you guys ever get into like fights growing up, or were you guys training before or yet, like after you guys got?
I
into
think
fights?
Ethan's a witness to this. Against Ayman, I'm 10,000-0.
Oh, still the big brother.
I'll tell you something.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
If you ask Eamon, it's different. They'll, you know.
Call him right now.
Call him right now.
Call him right now.
You
Are you sure? It's fight week. It's fight
He won't make it to the Aldo fight. He won't make it to the Aldo fight. If he dares. Listen, guys, I stopped counting after 10,000. Like, what am I going to do? Start going 10,001? Like, this is getting petty. So I just stopped counting.
You know, that's a little brother complex, actually, because we had Liam, Ethan's little
Yes.
brother. yesterday.
Unwavering confidence in Liam, I will say.
It's amazing.
He's been doing well, but the confidence is far ahead of his
skills,
his accolades.
He was like talking to me, Ethan, Pio, Judo Mike, and then Nikki, and he was like, "Dude, I can beat you guys in competition."
He's like the odds. I have okay odds. You, Mike, I give 30%. I beat you. Peo 25, Ethan 20. Felix, I beat you every time. Felix is like, okay, fine.
Oh yeah, Felix was there.
And yeah, the little brother complex.
It's awesome though. I think it's much better for a competitor to be overly confident than
overly timid.
Exactly, overly timid. I think there's it's probably a 0% chance that he beats us, but I think it's good. I think it's good.
Yeah. Just like we were talking earlier about, obviously Eamon's fighting Aldo. That fight will, by the time this airs, that fight will have happened. I'm like pumped to see him. He had it's like a second rise for him. So excited. He was, we were training partners since day one. There's other really notable fighters at Tristar that have been around for a while. I want to see them shine. Guys like Ollie had a crazy tear. He's retired now. He went on a nice run. There's also Louis. Louis fighting Friday. Mandel.
Where is this?
Louis fighting another promotion, Samurai, right?
Fight pass.
On Fight Pass,
Sick.
135, right? Yeah. So he's also since day one. And Mandel, I'm hoping he Mandel Nalo, his guy pulled out, so that sucks. But hopefully he gets on the card last second. That would be super
You're
cool.
saying the UFC card?
The UFC card,
Hopefully, yeah.
because Ben was opponent pulled out, right?
Yeah.
So
they're
I
looking
don't.
for an extra 50.
Oh man,
Bro, it'd
how
be so cool. It'd be so cool. And Mandel's a killer, man. No, I keep telling these guys how he's so striking is his strong suit. He's super technical, lanky, and his grappling's good.
So unassuming as well.
He's
this guy.
He's one of the
Rat
funniest
garbage.
people. I know his Instagram rat garbage, ridiculous. But bro, him and Louis together are two of the funniest people I've ever met. And I want to see these guys,
Yeah,
go
blow
at it.
up, man.
But yeah, it'd be cool.
I remember watching Mandel strike out up at Henzo's once he came down or whatever, and it's it's another guy like Mike Jones, crazy long reach,
Super lanky,
light on their feet. I'm like, wow,
and they know how to use it. It's like you're saying before, the guy needs to find a style. Like Mandel, Mike Jones, Jackson, they're not going to fight like Tyson. They're going to use their attributes. I'm assuming. I don't know if Jackson's in there, Yeah, but it's find the style, learn other styles for sure, but pick the one and then it narrows down you're going to master what your attributes already do for you, and you're going to be so much more dangerous for it. And yeah, Mandel's like that, and it's so fun to watch him spar, and it would be really cool to see him get in there.
Random question. What are your thoughts on? It's gonna now degrade the podcast. What's your thoughts on aliens? Do they exist?
Let's go.
Let me tell you something. I do believe aliens exist for sure, but I don't think human beings have necessarily made contact with them. So, but I do believe there has to be other life somewhere.
Fermi paradox, right?
Yeah, well, Fermi paradox is a little bit different. I think Fermi paradox is hey, they should be here by now, according to his calculations. But I think what we know about the universe is not even 1%. There's things out there that are so unimaginable. So that's how I see it. I see it if you think about the germ that's living on your skin right now, that to him, that the skin is his universe. It's nothing. The skin is nothing. You got to think at that level. I think our universe is not even a. It's not even a.
It's skin.
It's not even a microbe.
Now, are you religious?
Yeah, I studied religion for many, many years, so I'm very well versed in religion and philosophy. So everything thinking, everything thoughts. I have definitely a belief in God. I do believe that God exists. It's the most obvious thing. I think atheism doesn't exist personally. That's my one of view. I know it sounds crazy to people out there listening to it, but I have a background in philosophy, and I like to debate or discuss with atheists. And I feel that every time I do have a discussion with atheists, they end up realizing that they do believe, or they have a belief in God that they're suppressing psychologically. I believe it's all psychological. I think it's not a question of logic; it's a question of psychology. And I know it's a very strange thing to hear. A lot of people are gonna hear that and be like, "Oh, that's crazy." I'm known for this. This is my kind of my domain, philosophizing about religion and God. So it can sound crazy, I understand, but if we sit down and unpack it, it can be something that I think people will start to at least entertain.
So what do you mean that they usually suppress their belief in God?
Well, here's the thing, okay? Imagine, let's keep it super simple because I don't want like people to turn up the channel off. But imagine you were blind your entire life, okay? And I talked to you about the color red, but you're a very smart guy. You're like Einstein, you know? I talked to you about the color red. And you're like, man, coach, I don't understand anything about what you're talking about. When you talk about red, I've never seen red. I'm blind, man. Don't you understand? I'm like, hey, man, Damien, take the red bicycle. And you go out there and you grab it. I feel it's a bicycle, but I don't know if it's red. But I'm like, man, what's wrong with this guy? He doesn't understand. It's like, coach is crazy. You know, he doesn't understand. The man is blind. What I'm trying to say is that no matter how smart of a guy you are, unless you see red, you can never talk about red. You don't know what I'm talking about. Is that true?
It's funny because he's actually colorblind.
Are you?
I cannot see red.
Really?
I'm colorblind.
There you go. There you go. So you can't see red. You can see shades of gray.
I could see red. And then, but that was an extreme. But when there's shades, I can't tell if it's red or green. It's like kind of like
Okay.
blends a little bit.
Okay. But to keep it super simple, if you had no vision your entire life, but your IQ, you're an intelligent person, you still cannot know anything about the color red. You need to experience red to know red. Is that correct or not? I want you guys to tell me.
I believe so. That to know red, I would have to see it.
Right. I'll tell you guys something. It's impossible to picture red unless you have experience, okay? John Locke said it best. He says, whatever's in your mind had to be in your senses, okay? Senses is like seeing, tasting, touching, hearing, smell, okay? Your 5 senses. For it to be in your head, it had to be in your senses, okay? So for you to know the smell of a rose, you know, to take a random example, you'd have to smell a rose. I can't tell you about it. I can't make you understand. I can't go out there in the world, see the color red, come back and tell you about it, and you now can picture the color red. It's impossible. Mm-hmm. I have to take you out in the garden, show you the color red, and now we could talk about the color red. Once it's in your head, that means I know it was once in your senses. Okay? I could do this with absolutely everything you have in your head, everything you can picture in your head. I could tell you where you discovered it in the world. Okay? To keep it simple. Think about, I don't know. Do you know what a banana tastes like? Okay, you've eaten fruit. You've had a banana before, right? Now, let's say you lived on a planet where bananas didn't exist. And I came in and I showed you a banana and it's a yellow banana. You're like, what is that? What does it taste like? Well, I'm like, you know, if I tried to describe it to you, you're like, I have no idea what you're talking about. You have to taste it, man. You have to give it a try, right? It's the same thing with everything. There's no exception, right? Okay. Now, if I tell you, look, I want you to picture a red apple in your head. Can you do it?
Yes.
You could do it, Coach?
Yes.
You could do it? Ethan, you could do it? Okay. Now I want you to clear your mind blank. I want you to picture a koppai. Picture it.
Fuck? A what?
A koppai.
Koppai?
Picture it.
No clue what that is.
But I want you to picture it anyway.
Okay. It's the
Can you-
word for me.
For me, that's what I don't even know how to
No,
spell
no,
it.
it's not a word. It's a thing.
Okay.
Can you picture it?
Of course not.
You can't, right?
I'm imagining a kiwi. That's
You
the
can't.
closest thing. No, I can't.
It's the same thing if you were a blind man and I talked to you about the color red. You'd feel the same way.
Yes.
I just made up the word koppai. It doesn't exist. It doesn't correspond to anything in the universe. I just made it up. It's a decoy word. If I told you the color red, you think about it in your head. In your head, you have an idea of red. Why? You've seen red. But then I said koppai. You're like, I never seen a koppai. I don't know what that is. You can't think of it. Doesn't matter how smart you are. It's not a question of intelligence. It's a question of experience. But how come? Remember, everything you have in your head corresponds to something out there in the world. If I tell you disc, it corresponds to, I'm picking up a coaster here. It's the shape of a disc, okay? It corresponds to something in the world. If you can talk about it, it corresponds to something in the world. I know I'm beating this to death, but there's a reason why. When I talk to you about God, when I say God, you don't like, what are you talking about? You don't have the reaction of a koppai. You have the reaction of the color red. Yeah, I know what the color red is. Sure, I know. We can talk about it. We can have a debate. We can discuss. There's a topic to discuss. When I said the word koppai, you're like, what's this guy talking about? To me, it's just a word. It means nothing. When I talk to an atheist, they never have that reaction. When I say God, they never say, what are you talking about? What's this word? I never heard of it. It doesn't correspond to anything in the universe out there. Yet, when I talk to you about God, and don't forget, guys, this is not my own personal philosophy. Okay, this is like legitimate philosophy. Okay, the best thinkers in the world, many of the greatest thinkers in the world agree to this. Okay, this is not my own thinking. Okay, just to clarify things. When I talk to you about God, you're like, hey, wait a second. I don't necessarily believe in God. Okay, you don't believe in God, fine. But to me, that's like you're saying, I don't believe in the color red. Because you're acknowledging the subject. You've had experience with God. Because if you didn't have experience with God, you couldn't talk about God. Now, I know this podcast just took a major left turn, but you asked me the question.
It's okay.
It's all right. No, the Simple Man podcast. There's
words, man. That's all we got.
yeah, exactly.
I like that.
So think about this. I know a lot of people are going to object. Okay, just think about it a little bit for a second, okay? When you have experience with the color red, now you could take the color red and you could do anything with it in your mind. Now you can make a collage. You can mix it up. Okay, so let's say, for instance, have you ever seen a red moon, like a real moon, the color red? No, you haven't. But you've seen the moon, you saw the color red, and in your imagination, you can make something up.
Of course.
Okay? So when somebody tells me, look, I believe in the God of Thor, well, that's the God of lightning. So you took lightning, you took the idea of God, and you mixed it together. That's why Jews and Muslims, we don't want to mix anything with God, right? Our religions are super strict. Don't take God, the idea of God, and mix it with any religion or any other idea. So for instance, some people say, I believe in the God of love. You know, the pagans believe in the God of love. They experience love, they experience the idea of God, and then they mix it together. So that's where monotheism comes from. We're like, hey, you're making a collage in your mind. Things that you connect to in your mind are not necessarily true. So I'll give you a great example, okay? Nobody believes in Santa Claus, right? Nobody, obviously. But men exist, sleighs exist, reindeer exist, flying exist. All the things that make up Santa Claus, they exist. When you break Santa Claus down, what is he? Well, all the pieces exist. You've seen a bird flying in the sky. You've seen a human being. You've seen a sleigh. You've seen a reindeer. You can collage it together. When you collage it together, that's something we call contingent or compounded. It doesn't necessarily exist. But something that's a simple idea must exist. So one of the great atheists admitted to this. His name is David Hume. He said, look, I've never seen a golden mountain, but gold exists and mountains exist. You understand? So the simple ideas must be known via experience. They can't be known via logic. Like you can't know Kopai via logic. There's no amount of logic that will make you understand what a Kopai is or the color red.
Interesting. You want to go back to some? I know Elton has had a lot of questions for you.
I personally praise Thor every night. I praise.
I think you
Thor.
wanted to follow that discussion.
Yeah,
No.
no worries, no worries.
Okay, all right. All right. Sorry, all my questions are about training and fighting.
No
so.
problem. He asked me the question, but I get a lot of. It's crazy. I get a lot of questions on this. Okay, and I know the common counters and so. I'm very deep into philosophy. I studied for over 20 years. It's why we say what we say. I know it sounds crazy, and there's a lot more to it, of course. But that's it in a nutshell. Because people ask me all the time, and I want to give them an answer. I don't want to just keep telling them, well, it's difficult. No, you got to give people a little taste of it.
All right. So there's a book that came out many years ago that I like a lot. It's called The Talent Code. Are you familiar with this? Yeah. All right. So basic premise of the book is identifying like talent hotbeds. Guy goes around, spends time at all of them, and then tries to extract like what's the common denominator? Like what is it about these places that make them turn out just talented person after talented person? I think Tristar is one of those. In your view from the inside, what is it about Tristar? Like what are the qualities of Tristar that make you be able to produce at a high level just time and time again just across the years?
I think there's two methods to building a gym. There's the Darwinian method where you're in a big city where there's a lot of studs, like there's a lot of high population and a lot of great athletes, and they all come in the practice room. They all kill each other, and the last few guys who made it could survive that kind of practice room. They're the best, and they'll be champion. And then there's another type of practice room where there's a synergy. People are working together. There's good coaching. They're trying to resolve problems. And you know that kind of gym because everybody's good. It's not just a handful of guys that are good. It's not a handful of guys who are good and a bunch of dead bodies. And then I would say there's a third option where I think that's what was happening in New York. You had really, really good coaching and a lot of studs in one practice room. Like you remember New York, how it was. Like you could be a killer, man, and you were just a regular Joe that day. There was Sambo guys, guard guys, wrestling studs, judokas. Like there was guys who were the best leg lockers, guys with the best guillotine. It was a who's who on the mat. It was insane. And you had really good coaching staff. So I would say that's the third option, So at Tristar, I would say, look, Montreal's 2 million people. We have we're not a small city, we're not a huge city, but the coaching staff are really dedicated at giving the best training experience and like really working with every level. We have a very, very good basics program. I'm a big believer in like when somebody walks in the gym, 6 months later or a year later, they should be really good. So your basics program has to be very, very strong. And then the all levels or higher level training has to be very well thought out, well prepared. And so I think we have a bit of both. We're not a small town, but we're not a huge city either. So I think you need those two. You need to have a lot of bodies coming in. You need to have a high traffic area, really helps. And a really good coaching staff. Because I'll tell you something, there are some great coaches, but they're in a small town. They don't have that many bodies walking in. So they can't really show you, all the tradition, all the great years of wrestling. Some guys, they wrestle in the Olympics, then they move into a small town. Yeah, they might have a handful of students, but they don't have that much talent in their area. So you need a flow of good athletes coming in, and you need a great coaching staff. Those two are, I think, the two most important elements.
The absolute most important element is having Coach Firas Zahabi. That's the common denominator, all right?
But each team doesn't have a coach.
Exactly. That's why we're falling apart. It's all downhill from here.
That's why they're not a team.
See? There we go.
Well, now my feelings are hurt.
There we go. Man, the days watching you like bring it all together for all the fighters, like I feel like that's you're bringing like all the things we've been talking about on this podcast, like the philosophy, your ways of understanding, learning, and how to like weed out the techniques that don't work, like mixing flow sparring with intense sparring, the weightlifting, the techniques, the philosophy, and the attention to detail brought like running, like the purpose and how the pose method, all these factors will lead to a group excelling or not excelling. And also the fundamentals program, like the class today, like I just got here. I just kind of haven't been here since October. And like the fundamentals, or the jiu-jitsu class rather, I see so many new faces pretty much every time I come. Even I was last year in October, like I see so many new faces, and they're not lost. Like you're getting them up to speed very fast. Like I'll look around the room and I'll remember some guys obviously as a core group, but there's a lot of new faces that are already adept. Like they seem to have the fundamentals down. They seem to be, moving properly. There's younger kids also just jumping in the room. George is there all the time training too. So it's a clear testament to how the gym is like you said, putting together these fundamentals, and they're excelling and already training with the OGs in the room and giving them good looks. So yeah, it seems like it's working out. Yeah. I
guess for your basics program, specifically jiu-jitsu, what are you having? I'm assuming you're not teaching them, but like what's the basic curriculum?
Are you familiar with like speed drills?
No.
So like instead of doing like situation or what do you guys call it again? Ecological. I do with beginners. I like speed drill. So like basically imagine I'm on my back and I have a butterfly guard on a standing up partner. And I go from butterfly guard to single leg X or Ashigurami standard Ashi, and then to X guard. And they just do that for 1 minute. And then every minute the bell rings and they switch position. So then you're just doing that. I believe in muscle memory. I believe in like repetition.
I remember doing this when I was still coming up. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so basic. And you're just doing it over and over again till you can't get it wrong. Like you don't think about it. And then we do speed drill. So I'll do Toriando, like throw the legs to the side, get to the knee on belly. Then you come back to the starting position. You throw the legs to the left side this time. You switch side and you go knee on belly on the other side. So you're doing speed drills. I say do it correctly. And once you do it correctly, you're trying to do it faster and faster. So proper technique first, and then we go faster and faster. And I believe that's the best way to get good quickly. To go from white belt to blue belt, in my opinion, in my experience, it's just doing speed drills. So there's speed drills from your back and there's speed drills for passing the guard. Because I'm a big believer in teaching them guard. That's the first thing I try to teach you. Passing the guard and then guard. And then once a week I make them do wrestling speed drills.
Say there's a kid that wants to, become an MMA champion. Would you prefer that they get good at one martial art first and really focus on one martial art and then bring on the secondary? Or would you just teach them everything at the same time and then try to get them good at both?
I would focus on wrestling and jiu-jitsu first if they're young, because I believe I developed their athleticism. So your connective tissue, your strength, your ability to grind gears, to explode, will really be more developed, in my opinion, if we do wrestling / jiu-jitsu training. Not just jiu-jitsu. but wrestling with jiu-jitsu. Because I think trying to overpower another human being, especially when you're standing on your feet, develops a type of strength that you can't get in the practice in the weight room.
Yeah, I've always heard like you talk about like the first sports you do, wrestling and gymnastics. Is that fair? Yeah, and like I do also feel like wrestling, you build a toughness that you don't build if you only do jiu-jitsu, even though they're both grappling. Like standing grappling, obviously it's its own world in terms of it is grappling the same way as like standing versus ground or two seated opponents. It's completely in its own world, separate from striking. Like you're building force, different muscle movements and everything. But it's very uniquely different than just jiu-jitsu grappling. Like it's different goals, different orientations. Like you just get off your back, and overpowering a standing person is very different than overpowering a seated person. It's like, yeah, it's obviously techniques are involved in that, but it's very different. And different level of toughness, I think.
This is kind of a side question, but what's your opinion on essentially like the public school system? And the reason I ask is because you have kids that these days that drop out and are homeschooled to then pursue martial arts, or pursue jiu-jitsu, pursue MMA, and I mean, you're one of the greatest coaches in the sport, or very well renowned, and it's something that I have entertained in my mind for my future kids. Like, I don't care if they want to do MMA or jiu-jitsu or whatever, but like I feel like I don't see as much value in the public school system if my child wants to pursue something else. Now, if that something else is something that they need education for, like they want to be a doctor, then obviously you have to go to school. But if they want to be a pro athlete or they want to be a fighter, then I actually think it's probably best that they just get homeschooled and then pursue what they want to pursue. What's your thoughts on this?
Learning how to read is overrated, I think.
I think you got to kind of be careful with that, because the thing is, like, you don't want to make the sport your entire life. Like, I think a lot of guys will have success, and then after their success, they'll have a sharp drop, because guess what? Sooner or later, you can't do that sport no more. So I think you have to have a good head on your shoulders. You have to have some ability to understand the world around you. You can't just be a wrestler. You can't just be a boxer. You can't just be an MMA fighter. I've seen really, really high-level MMA guys have very difficult personal lives, and the aftermath of their careers were very difficult. Why? They know nothing else. Like, it's like if they fell on a weird planet. Like they were on a planet MMA, and now they're in planet Earth, and they don't know where they fit in on planet Earth. So homeschooled, I think, like, I have that a little bit of trouble with my sons too, because there's so much in the gym, and they're like, the culture in the gym is very like different than the culture in school and the rest of the world. And I tell them, you got to tone it down. You can't talk outside the gym like you do in the gym. In the gym, the guys razz each other, they pick on each other, they kind of like, they're a little more rough, and their jokes are more like, toxic masculinity, especially when Ethan's in the practice room. So I tell them, like, guys, that's in the gym, that's locker room talk, that's gym talk, that's like, you can't bring that out in the rest of the world, and you got to be more friendly, more. So I just think that you have to be careful. There has to be something to fall back on. And here's the thing, look, do you have to be a world champion to be happy? That's an important question. I don't think you have to be a world champion. Listen, there's not everybody's going to be a world champion. So there's got to be, more to life than just being a world champion. Like, there's got to, like, I know this might sound too serious, but I mean, I don't want my sons or my kids having a psychological breakdown in life. Like, there's got to be more to life, like, than fighting. There is more to life than fighting. So I think sometimes we got to remember, fighting is fun. Yes, it could also be your career, it could put food on the table, but there's got to be more. And I think a human being with more dimensions to their life than just fighting, they're actually more successful.
Yeah, I think like it's I think the balance would take you further. Like, obviously, we're definitely not. You're not going to be like, I'm not going to dedicate myself 100% to this, but I think it's good to like pull back and be balanced. And like you said, I think it'll take you further. Like, if you're just tunnel vision, you may lose sight on where you are in the world and what you're doing this for. And as outside factors, like, yeah, if I have kids one day, that's going to be more important than any jiu-jitsu career, any MMA career I'm going to ever have. Like, that's going to matter more to me. It doesn't mean I'm going to train less hard. It doesn't mean I'm going to lose sight of my goals. If anything, maybe it may sharpen my focus. Like, now I have this whole new motivation. Not that, like, if I was homeschooled, I wouldn't have that. I guess it could be possible to like teach your kids even if they are homeschooled, but I do think there's something to like just giving them that outside perspective. Like, yeah, not just in the gym, because it's obviously very different. They're also not around their age group. They're not around kids their age in a regular gym setting. They're not like forced to learn a subject they hate, which may be like, you know, sitting through some shitty history lesson that I know I never need these random facts, but like there is something to that, like, you know, these like fucking Algonquin, like I don't need to learn about this shit, but like, you know, it's important to learn more diverse things, like you're saying. You just learn about the planet you're on, learn about these external factors, and just be more kind of well-rounded of a human. Yeah.
You have any other questions?
I got to tell you, I have one fighter. He literally had nothing else but fighting. And on fight night, he would hyperventilate. He had 2 psychologists working with him. He had like constant like mental coaches. I thought it was crazy. I thought it was insane.
This is at like a high level.
Yes, very high level.
Jeez.
Okay, the highest level you can. I'm not talking about George, another guy.
Yeah.
And he would hyperventilate. And I was like, dude, I start to understand after years of thinking, why is it so scary? And
It's all he's got.
it's all he's got. If it doesn't work out today, his whole identity, his whole existence doesn't make sense to him. And this was like, everything was good until his career started to, you know, the body gets older, father time catches us all. He started having a existential crisis. And his whole psyche was, his planet is crumbling. And I thought, like, man, if this guy had something else in life, it wouldn't be so much pressure today. Like, he could have fought better. You know what I mean? Like, it was too much pressure, I think.
Do you think that as a coach, like, do you, I guess, help your athletes with the mental struggles that they have? Like, what do you feel like your role as a coach is? Or is it like each fighter kind of has to do it for themselves? Like, because
He's a therapist above everything. Psychology, yeah.
well, because it's like, I feel like athletes all kind of digest nerves in different ways, but not every athlete has the ability to digest the nerves of fighting or of competing in front of a big stage. So like, I don't know.
I totally agree. No, I like, as a coach, I like to do everything. And I obviously, look, philosophy and psychology is interrelated. The first psychologist ever was Socrates. If you ask a scholar in psychology, who's the first psychologist? A lot of them will argue it's Socrates. It's the know thyself philosophy. And I specialize in Greek philosophy. So I'm telling you, like, analyzing the human being, it's what I love to do. Okay, and I'll tell you something. Keeping it simple. I think it's all about good moves. To quote Bobby Fischer, okay, it's how good you are. Confidence is competence. If you're confident but you're incompetent, you're not good at jiu-jitsu, then you're delusional.
Liam.
Yeah. Yes.
You're delusional. You know what I mean? If you're confident, there should be something in the world that explains your confidence. If you're going in the gym and you're tapping everybody out and you're going to the tournament, you're getting gold medal after gold medal, well, that explains your confidence. If you're getting killed in the practice room, you go out in tournaments and you're getting killed, but you're confident about it, you're talking so much smack, well, you're delusional. So for me, it's competence has to reflect your confidence has to reflect your competence. Now, the problem arises when the guy's really good, but he has no confidence. The guy's way better than this guy he's fighting, but he's scared. He's so scared he won't throw a punch. He won't try. I've seen it as well. That's when it's a problem.
What do you do then?
Well, you have to get to the root of why he's so scared. And most of the time is because they can't fathom. Losing is too painful. The idea of losing is so scary. That's why I think you have to have a balance in your life. If you have a wife and kids, if you have a job, if you have a career, if you have a network of friends, you have something else to fall back on. Okay, I'm going to try my best, and if it works out, great. If it doesn't work out, I have these other things in life that I look forward to. I have these other chapters. When there is nothing else, it's like, you know, let's say you're walking on a plank. John used to put it this way. John, you're walking on a plank, but the plank's on the floor. Okay, you can walk across it. If I put it 100 feet in the air, you're like, hey, if I take one wrong step, I die. You're going to be, your heart rate's going to be racing. You're going to be too scared. Your legs are going to be shaking.
It's the same plank.
It's the same plank, same thing. That's the whole thing. If the consequence is too threatening, you cannot operate. So you got to have something else. It's got to not matter to a certain extent. It has to matter, yes. I want it. I want it more than other things, and I'm ready to fight for it. I'm ready to fight to the end for it. But some guys, when it's too important, when it's the only thing, when it's their identity, I think it backfires. Like, I'll tell you something. George was great with that. George was very anxious in fighting, but he had other things he loved in life. And he was in higher pressure situations. People didn't expect him to win. People expected him to kill the other guy, to win without a blemish. And if he had a seesaw battle, they would criticize him. Like, George faced a lot of public criticism. Oh, you didn't knock anybody out. Yeah, you've been winning for 7 years, but you didn't knock the guy out. It's like, the more famous you are, the more criticism you get. But George had a balanced approach. He's like, you know what? He used to tell me, if I don't win, the world still keeps going around. It ain't gonna end the world. The world keeps going. He had a balanced approach. Some people, they think if they lose, there's no, like, they die. It's almost like they're gonna die.
Yeah, I like to be very okay with losing. to alleviate that tension, I sometimes will just jump right off that plank to make sure, I know how to land. No,
I think like the kind of sports psychology is a topic that me, Ethan, and Nicky Rod have been talking about relatively recently, where it's pretty active in our mind. And it's like a big thing was the idea that, like, if you lose, okay, what's the worst that happens? You still have a great family, great life. We have so much to be thankful for and grateful for that it's like it kind of takes away the pressure of competing, and you do end up competing to the best of your abilities oftentimes. You're
probably like less likely to get tired. You're less likely to make mistakes. You're operating in like a cleaner fuel in your brain, cleaner fuel in your body. It's just the environment is less kind of hazy. You're just like, it's okay. Whatever happens, happens. Obviously we all want to win, and we're going to train. We're going to put in, make sure we're competent, and the rest is going to happen the way it happens. And yeah, you guys have been a little like more religious than you used to be before. You guys have been learning about that more and more.
Yeah. Been like, because it like ebbs and flows, right? It's like sometimes like, go down the rabbit hole, or like, but then sometimes you just forget, you end up like life gets in the way. So I think that's like kind of a natural thing, but definitely on more of a religious kick.
The reason I say is like kind of like you guys talk about like this God's plan type of thing. Like you guys have said that on the podcast a lot. Like it's out, it's just out of our hands, and we prepared, and now it's just fate or destiny,
I think it's like everything kind of happens for a reason. It's all. I believe exactly that. Yeah, it's all part of God's plan. There's some method to the madness. There's a reason why all this happened, and I can't see it right now, but
maybe you will one day.
One day I'll look back and say like all the dots had to connect this way, or else I couldn't get to where I was then. Obviously,
I think that's very important. If you think that way, it's very hard to be a guy who thinks that way. Or as a guy who's overthinking, because every decision he makes is life or death. That guy can't operate that way. You know what I mean? So I feel like you got to kind of not. You got to at one point like realize, hey man, I did my best. I prepared as best I can. That's it. As we say, the rest is in God's hands. Whatever happens, I prepared my best. That's it. That was my job. That's all I have control over. That's what I have control over. The rest, man, I'm gonna see who's my real friends. I'm gonna see who's really, loyal. We'll find out, and you shouldn't be scared to find out. Everybody wants to win. Of course, we all want to win. We're all ready to fight to the end, the bitter end. There's nobody saying you should just give up. No, it's never an option. But what I'm trying to say is that some guys, they analyze it so much, they put so much pressure that they choke themselves. I call it paralysis by analysis. He's so worried about the possible consequences of throwing a jab, he won't throw a jab. Well, guess what? You ain't going to win if you don't take a risk. You have to make your peace with it. You're either going to live in a bubble, or you're going to go out in the world and you're going to take risks. And sometimes it's not going to work out. But you're going to have lived, to your full potential. You're going to get some scars, you're going to get some bumps and bruises, but you're going to have lived your life. I don't want to be a guy in a bubble who takes no risks ever in my life.
Of course. Talk about risk. How many people do you think it would take to kill a gorilla? One gorilla? Because initially I thought that the 100 people were fucked, but now I actually think that we'll take the gorilla easy. I think we gas that gorilla out.
That's the one question, endurance.
The parameters are like, it's 100, 170 pounds.
No, we'll just say us two and clone us multiple.
Okay, so how many?
Us four.
How many us four?
By 25.
Yeah.
Multiply it.
Okay.
Guys, let me tell you something, okay? A gorilla will rip your testicles out. Did you know that?
I do that.
I'll jerk it off.
He's not complaining. Ethan's not complaining.
Bro.
Ethan's not complaining.
That gorilla will have post-op clarity. He won't be fighting for long, my friend. Sorry, serious answer though. Yeah.
A gorilla will bite your fingers off, so you can't swing from branch to branch. who's going to engage him first? That's my question. So, like, the first 25 of us are going to have to die. We're not all going to simultaneously jump on him at once. There's not room for 100 of us to be on top of him. So the first guys who are going to scream and get maimed, we'd have to, like, be ready to sacrifice, I would say, 30 of us, at least, before he gets tired. Mm-hmm. I just think he just ends up chasing us because we're all running in random directions. If you're going to be realistic about this, okay, and I consider this to be like a
This is real.
it's real, right? No, honestly, everybody will be running, screaming in every direction.
What if
We're
let's say
dogs.
just for argument's sake, like the parameters are we're all in unison. It's like a hive mind.
Yeah,
Type
hive
thing.
mind.
Yeah, like the four of us here, we control our clones, and we're like, go sacrifice five.
And the thing is also, we'll say the parameters, like if we are truly running away, we know that our family is gonna die. So all of us are like, dude, fuck that.
gonna
Like
get
we'll
this
die
gorilla.
trying or
Yeah.
fucking kill this gorilla.
What's
Yeah,
the game plan?
kill the gorilla.
Okay, hive mind.
Yes, let's go.
Hive mind. Human beings win. Why? The gorilla gets tired. After about 50 or so deaths, he's going to start getting tired. He's going to try to run away. He's going to become passive. He doesn't want to engage. And how do you kill him? That's going to be tough. It's going to be tough, but I think we could suffocate him, fatigue him, we hang on his body. He's going to get weaker quickly. But if it wasn't hive mind, I think every human being would be running in a direct. There was no way we'd work in unison because the death is too gruesome. He's biting, he's scratching, he's clawing, he's ripping genitalia out.
So we're doing this.
I like that.
So we're doing this in 8 weeks. We have a fight camp. What's the plan?
Sacrifice 25 Ethans and then the rest.
We'll kill them all.
Oh, man. You know what? Honestly, I would. Seriously speaking, you asked me a serious question. I take this stuff very seriously.
Us too.
I would put Damien on my shoulders.
I'm a big bear.
Roar, we'd scare him because for animals, appearance is reality. So I'd have like a two-headed human being walking up to him. It'll corral him into a corner. And then the guys who are not piggybacking, who are not on somebody else's back, they would run in and kind of jump on him. And we would like fall from the top, from the height, and kind of hold on to him. Our whole game plan would be to hold, again, hive mind. Guys, some guys are going to die here. We'd have to hang on to his limbs. It's not about hitting him or wrestling him. Hang on to his limbs till he gets tired. And until he's completely given up because he can't move his body. He's full of lactic acid. He's completely killed all his reserves. And then we, beat him over the head till he's dead.
I like that answer. All right, I think we'll call it there.
Yeah, we went a bit over, but I guess it's okay.
It's no
It's
worries.
fine.
Simple
It's
Man's
fine.
got it covered, with the new
It's fine.
TriStar sponsorships.
Send the bill. I don't care. Send it to Damien, though. Dude, thank you both so much. Elton, for coming up here. Firas, for your time. We really appreciate it. This is huge for us. We learned so much. I learned a lot. I hope I don't forget anything, even though,
Yeah, I guess real quick, do you have
Yeah.
what are some other questions that are super important that
One last.
Okay, yeah.
All right. So this is a little more, maybe a little more personal for me. You mentioned that. Yeah. Right.
Sorry.
Yeah, I didn't set that up very well. No. No. So when you were talking earlier about you started training and then George came and you guys were really kind of started doing like an MMA team together, and then it kind of grown into what it is now. I'm in a kind of a similar position. I've been working with this kid Jackson that's on our team. I'm 100% convinced this kid is going to be a superstar. He's just the most dedicated, the most consistent person I've ever met. I've been
improving so fast
Yeah.
too. It's awesome.
Been working with him since he was 11. And Damien came a couple years ago, and then we have another one, Diego, and then I think we have more on the way. And so I guess what I wanted to ask is if given the experience you have now, that Firas that was just getting started then and had those early stars that that went on to that became what they did and what you built on. What knowledge could you impart to him that might in turn help me?
Oh, that's a tough question. I would say, look, above all, it's consistency. You're trying to solve a problem every day. You're going in the gym. You have a solution-based approach. You're trying to find the best solution. You're not just copying what somebody else did. You're not just doing what worked in the past. You're constantly trying to evolve and grow. and resolve each problem as it comes. And trial by error, experimenting with different methods. There's no one method. Nobody's figured out the perfect way. I believe that, it's all about trying to go in the gym and have a solution-based approach. What's the right solution for this problem? You're not just going through the motions. You're actually thinking about how to make things more efficient. You're actively thinking about how to improve things, how to do things a little bit better here and there. And once in a while, you're going to discover something that's going to be a game changer. Once in a while, you're going to discover that thing. You've been trying to resolve this situation, I don't know, for years, and you had little answers here and there. But one day somebody comes in, or sometimes you stumble on a solution, and you're like, wow, this is a game changer. But it takes a lot of gym hours. It takes a lot of experimenting. We've all done it. We've all come across something that completely changed our game. And for me, that's what I live for, man. That's why I go in the gym every day. I'm trying to discover the next game-changing solution to a problem I have that is going to change the way we do things. And for me, that's what keeps it exciting.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, I guess so. We'll close it out now. Do you have anything you want to shout out? Like what's your? We're gonna tag you as well, but like your Instagram or any other products or?
Yeah, I have my Instagram. I don't even know what it is. It's probably my name because
Probably for us.
I post it through PO. So PO does my Insta. I have jujiclub.com if you guys want to get some instructions that my teaching style. It's all on jujiclub.com. And I have my YouTube channel. My YouTube channel is pretty big. It's like I podcast every week. I show some technique on there, and it's just a little fun channel.
Actually, one last thing popped in my head. You invented the Tim Tam? I forgot about this.
Look, I started the high-powered massager craze.
Yeah.
I tried to patent it. I tried to get 2,000 RPMs and up, 21 millimeter travel. It didn't pass. They didn't accept it. But if it had passed, I'd be the guy who basically gets paid for every single massager out there. I had a very, very popular company that had started, TimTam.tech. Then I was working with another team in the U.S., and they were running it, and they were doing fantastic. And I would say we had about 30 to 40% of the market. Tim Tam was doing really, really well. It's a high-powered massager. And then COVID hit us, and we couldn't get the products anymore. And then the knockoffs came on the market and just completely derailed the company. A lot of companies got derailed, to be fair. And during COVID, a lot of people got hurt. And then now the company's making a comeback slowly, but it's not like it was before.
Is it your company, or is it the partner, or did you sell it?
I started it. Okay, so I started on my own, and then I handed it off to another company that paid me. They paid me monthly, and I worked out a deal where I get paid and I don't have to worry about anything, and they run the company and they own the company, and I had just like a sponsorship. But that's the way I was happy, because I was getting paid. My whole thing is I just want to focus on what I do on the mat, and I wanted to make money on the side. So the company was growing. I was getting a percentage of what comes in, and it was out of my hands, which is the way I wanted it. I started it. I kickstarted it. And then when it grew legs, people bought into it. They took it over. I didn't want anything to do with controlling the company. I had really competent guys working it. And unfortunately, during COVID, it threw us for a loop.
All right, guys. Well, yeah, for us, thank you so much for coming on. Elton, thanks so much for coming out to Montreal. He flew out to Austin just for this podcast, and we were training every day, and he's just very, very dedicated. So I mean, I thank you guys both. If you guys watch to the end, we always like to have our followers leave an emoji. So what's the emoji that the followers or subscribers should leave in the comments below?
I don't know.
We're asking grown men to talk about emojis.
Well, we're grown men as well.
Groaner.
I don't know. How about a smiley face, guys? Leave us a smiley face if you.
The tiger.
The tiger. That's a good one.
Okay.
Tiger.
All
How about
right.
a gorilla? How about me for the gorilla?
Okay.
Give support to the gorilla. Now people are gonna say we talk shit about the gorilla. So let's
All right.
leave a gorilla.
Harambe needs some support.
Yeah, gorilla and a tiger in the comments below if you guys watch to the end. Guys, if you support the podcast, if you like the work that we're doing, make sure that you like and subscribe the channel, and make sure you check out Anaconda Fightwear using SimpleMan15 for our discount code. Also, shout out to our sponsors, MASF Supplements and Violent Hippie. Have a great day.